Right, I will call back to order. I'd like to resume the City of Salmon Arm regular council meeting of Monday, October the 26th. We're meeting by electronic means and in person, doing both, as authorized by Ministerial Order M192. We have Councillor Wallace Richmond, Councillor Lavery, and Councillor Eliason, who are with us virtually. We'll just check to make sure that Councillor Wallace Richmond and others can hear before I continue with the meeting here.
Yes, Your Worship, I can hear now.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much, Councillor Wallace Richmond. So I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are gathering here on the traditional territory of the Secwepemc people, with whom we share these lands and where we live and we work together. We have an agenda in front of us. I'll just check the staff first. Staff, are there any additions to the agenda?
Your Worship, there are a number of additions for the items this evening. I think there were 5 of them that we've handed out.
Okay, thank you very much. So, councillors, you should all have those late submission items for this evening's public hearing section. Any others, CAO?
No.
Okay. Councillors, are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll ask if there's any disclosure of interest for any councillor on any item. Seeing none, we will move forward with confirmation of minutes of the regular council meeting of October the 13th, 2020. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Cannon, that the regular council meeting minutes of October 13th, 2020 be adopted as circulated.
Are there any additions, deletions, or business arising? Seeing none, I will call the question. I'll ask virtual people just to use the chat line, make sure we're still working. All those in favor? Perfect, thank you very much. That passes unanimously. We'll move to committee reports. First one is Development Planning Services Committee meeting minutes of October the 19th, 2020. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the Development and Planning Services Committee meeting minutes of October 19th, 2020 be received as information.
Any additions, deletions, business arising? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, that passes unanimously. We'll move to 7.2, Active Transportation Task Force meeting minutes of October the 19th, 2020. We have a motion.
Moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Mayor Harrison, that the Active Transportation Task Force meeting minutes of October 19th, 2020 be received as information.
Great, thank you. Any additions, deletions, business arising, or comments? Right, just before I call the question, Councillor Lavery and I co-chair this committee, and we are certainly in the process of adding depth to our knowledge of active transportation. Jen Wilson and Chris Larson presented at our second task force meeting, and Phil McIntyre Paul and Shuswap Trail Alliance presented information on research at our second one. We're using Trello as an information provider, and Councillor Lavery has done a good job of educating us all on Trello. So I think we're moving along well. All those in favor of the minutes? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Columbia Shuswap Regional District update. That will be the next council meeting. We'll have that. Councillor Flynn, is there anything you wanted to share with council at this time?
No, thanks.
Thank you. We'll go to staff reports. Item 9.1, Director of Corporate Services, lease and operating agreement for Saskew Recreation Center facility, Shaw Center Twin Sheet Arena Complex, Saskew Little Mountain Sports Complex Fieldhouse, and Memorial Arena Sports Complex, April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2025. We have a proposed motion. If I could have a mover and a seconder to get it onto the floor, please. Thank you, Councillor Cannon, for moving. Seconded by Councillor Lindgren. I'll ask the corporate officer if she would share the report with us.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you're aware, the Shuswap Recreation Society has been
successfully managing and operating the Recreation Center facility, Twin Sheet Arena Complex, and Little Mountain Sports Complex Fieldhouse on behalf of the City of Salmon for many years in a professional and cost-effective manner. In 2018, the city purchased the Memorial Arena Sports Complex and added that facility to the others operated by Shuswap Recreation Society. On March 31st, 2020, the lease and operating agreements, which outline the terms and conditions that govern operation and management of the 4 city-owned facilities, expired. Due to the disruption caused by the global pandemic, the renewal of these agreements was put on hold until regular business resumed at these facilities. Leading up to the previous renewal in 2015, staff worked collaboratively with the Society to modernize the agreements. Neither the Shuswap Recreation Society Board nor the staff of SRS or the city had any changes to make for this proposed term. Key features of the agreements remain as follows. The CAO or designate for the City of Salmon will monitor and provide advice, approvals, and suggestions for the management and operation of the facilities. The CAO or designate shall sit on the Society's board as the secretary. The Society shall annually submit for review and approval of the City the proposed operating and capital budget and the resulting operating deficit, which will be underwritten by the City, and the City may make amendments at its sole discretion. Special event user rates and fees shall be evaluated and established by the Society after careful consideration of costs associated with holding the special event. However, the City may also veto such rates and fees as it deems appropriate. The Society shall provide sublease or licensed space to third parties to provide all food, beverage services, including the provision of alcohol products at the Twin Sheet Arena Complex. And the Society shall obtain the approval of the City prior to entering into sublease agreements. Staff are satisfied that these agreements reflect the continued commitment of both parties to provide outstanding recreation services to the community and recommend that the Mayor and Corporate Officer be authorized to execute the agreements with Shuswap Recreation Society for lease and operation of the 4 facilities for a 5-year term from April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2025.
Great, thank you very much. I'll open it up to councillors for questions or comments. Councillors, any comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Great, thank you. That passes unanimously, and I'd like to thank Councillor Cannon, who is the council representative on the Shuswap Recreation Society. Moving forward, item 9.2, Director of Engineering and Public Works, LED streetlight conversion, downtown phase 2. We have a proposed motion. If we could have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Lindgren moves. Councillor Wallace-Richmond second. Thank you. Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Thank you, Worship. So this report speaks to the streetlight conversion that we're continually working on, and that is for the replacement of the halogen lights to LED on the south side of the Trans-Canada Highway in the commercial area. So that's around, you'll see the map that I've highlighted in the report. Essentially, we're moving forward. We had taken a report just recently to utilize some of the savings from the LED replacement to move forward to next year to add in some additional lights. But this time we're asking to take some reserve surplus funds from the Hudson Street Revite project to implement these changes. And it is costed out at $21,600, and we're asking for a total of $30,000 to be reallocated for also the installation.
Great, thank you very much. I'll open up to councillors for any questions they may have or comments. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. Just curious, so on your map, there's yellow dots and blue dots. Can you just refresh our memories what those mean?
Director of Engineering and Public Works.
So, Your Worship, the map isn't entirely accurate. The blue dots are the actual existing high-pressure sodium lights, and the yellow dots are the actual LED lights. And so if you look at the Sentinoka Mall, you'll see we're actually missing the street lights from that location. So there's about 8 lights on the road in that location that are going to be replaced.
Okay.
So in total, I think there's about 24 lights or 30 lights in total that are going to be replaced.
Thank you. Councillor Lindgren?
Yes, and when we say replacing or putting in LED lights, are we replacing light standards and a whole new lighting system, or are we replacing bulbs in existing lights?
Director of Engineering and Public Works?
So, Your Worship, we're actually taking the actual heads of the lights and replacing them. So they're a complete changeover out of the heads. And the old heads, will save at the top shop, and we'll replace some of the ones that are damaged, or we will eventually auction them off.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That passes unanimously. We'll go to item 9.3, Director of Development Services, Agricultural Land Commission application number 395, Mountain View Baptist Church, Alberts, non-farm use. We have a proposed motion. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Flynn moves. Councillor Cannon second. Thank you. Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, the Mountain View Baptist Church, represented by the agent Kurt Alberts, who's not here in attendance, but there are some reps from the Mountain View Baptist Church. The property is located at 4480 30th Street Northeast, and the church would like to construct a 180 square meter addition to the existing building. In order to do that, several things are needed. The Agricultural Land Commission has to approve a non-farm use application, and that's what this report is all about. The property would have to be rezoned to P3 institutional, and that cannot happen unless the ALC approves the non-farm use application. We've discussed this at length at the last planning meeting and 2 years ago when it came to council for the previous application. I can answer any questions, and I'm recommending approval of this or that it be forwarded to the Land Commission.
Thank you very much. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you. I will vote in support. I think the report is pages long, and all it says is they want to build on an old basketball court that was there for an old school. I don't see how that's going to negatively impact agriculture. I don't see how it got declined the last time because of the playing fields that have limited agricultural capability, but I sure hope that this gets supported. It's, to me, just so simple and so straightforward. So I urge everybody to vote in favor so that it's unanimous from our table.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Other comments or questions from councillors? Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. I'm just wondering, is our agricultural committee, have they started meeting yet?
I'll have Councillor Lavery. Councillor Lavery, perhaps you would like to comment on the ACC, and we did the same way you did at planning.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. The AEC will convene virtually in November. This application, much like all the ones that have happened in the past since March, in the past 6 months, have just gone directly to council, as this one has. But in the notes, it's and we had a long discussion of this last week. The Agricultural Advisory Committee actually accepted the previous, more enhanced request that went to the ALC that was turned down. So the direct answer is we start up in, I think it's mid-November with the AAC. The previous application had been supported by the AAC, and we've been following the route, the COVID route as we have it.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this application? We had quite a long discussion at planning, but welcome any comments you might have. Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That passes with Councillor Eliason opposed. All other councillors are in favor. Thank you, and thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming to each of our council meetings. Best of luck with your application.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, we'll move forward to item 9.4, Director of Corporate Services, Visitor Information Services. And I'll ask the corporate officer to go through her report for us prior to asking for any motions from council. Corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Following a comprehensive tourism review that concluded in May 2020, and in light of the tremendous impact COVID-19 has had on travel, Council opted to close the Visitor Information Centre effective August 31st, 2020, and wait to determine the next iteration of visitor information services for the City of Salmon. Since the closure of the VIC, the City has assumed direct responsibility for visitor information services, providing tourism print materials and answering visitor inquiries in person at City Hall and by telephone and email. Staff have also updated the City's website to drive visitors to the Shuswap Tourism website, which provides regional destination information to help visitors plan their stays in our area. In discussions with Destination BC, staff have been advised that in order for the City to retain its membership in the Visitor Services Network program, the City must have a visitor services strategy in place. It is understood by DBC staff that the City is in a transitional period with respect to delivery of visitor services and have granted a grace period so that the City can decide how it will proceed. It should be noted that there are a number of communities in the province who operate visitor services without being members of DBC. However, there are valuable resources and some funding. $12,500 in 2020 was provided to the Chamber of Commerce. And so it is felt by staff that retaining the membership would be of value for the City moving forward. It is timely to determine next steps so that the City is prepared in advance of the 2021 tourism season. The following options are presented for Council's consideration and could be funded in 2020 by the approximately $45,000 that was saved by the early closure of the VIC. Number 1, engage local contractor Margaret McCormick of Authentic Experiences Consulting to create a short-term 2021-2022 strategy with flexibility to maneuver shifts in the tourism landscape, as well as recommendations for longer-range planning that will allow the City to retain its DBC membership and also provide a clear way forward. Number 2, continue to provide a basic level of visitor services from City Hall with no strategy. This option would not create an additional budget impact. However, it would likely result in the loss of the DBC membership. Number 3, issue a request for proposals seeking a qualified service provider to draft a strategy and manage visitor services on the City's behalf. This process could delay the City being ready for the 2021 season, and the impact to the budget is not known. Number 4, directly engage a local tourism stakeholder to manage visitor services on the City's behalf, including the development of a visitor services strategy. This option could be quicker than option number 3 because there would be no procurement process, but that could also result in the City paying a higher fee because we don't know what the competitive rate could be for that. And it also could delay us being ready for the 2021 tourism season. The original intent of this exercise was to review the tourism functions in the City to ensure that dedicated funds are used in the most effective and efficient manner possible, and that a cohesive and consistent message is being shared no matter who is delivering the service. Any of the options presented must include a strong commitment from all stakeholders to engage in frequent and robust communication with one another. In the past, each organization operated somewhat independently of the others, and it's clear that a successful regional model requires that we work in tandem so that our visitors and local businesses receive the best service at all times. We recently met Councillor Eliason, Councillor Cannon, Lana from Economic Development, and Kyle from Shuswap Tourism, and I do feel that that is the intent of all parties, is to work together for the best possible outcome.
Great, thank you very much, Corporate Officer. Just before I open up to councillors, and I'll start with Councillor Eliason in a minute, do you have a recommendation of which of the 4 options you would, from a staff perspective? I don't want to put you on the spot, but...
Your Worship, I would recommend option number 1 because I think it positions us the best moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Eliason, did you want to comment? Because you've been involved all the way through on this item.
I'd like to hear what other councillors have to say. I'm definitely interested in pursuing option 1 at this point, though.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, I'll open it up to council for any questions or comments you wish to make. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. I appreciate all the work that the committees have done and recognize that we need to make sure that we have a really comprehensive plan. I think tourism is a big part of who we are in Salmon Arm, and we want to get this right. I'm curious, I mean, for me personally, I lean towards option 3. I think that people have some pretty, there's creative minds out there, and people are thinking, you know, if we put it out to people, I think that as a contested type application or request for proposals, we push people to come up with creative ideas, and I'm positive that if we put it out like that there will be ideas that we've never thought of. However, I recognize that we are on a short timeline if we want to have something ready for this summer or spring, and I'm curious if somebody could fill me in a little more on who Margaret McCormick is and what she does and how we know about her.
Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. I'll ask the corporate officer because I know that she is familiar with Ms. McCormick.
Through your worship, Margaret McCormick previously worked for Destination BC as an executive and did come recommended by Destination BC when they knew that we were sort of embarking on this journey. In addition, she has done some consulting work for Shuswap Tourism, and she lives in Blind Bay.
Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. We'll go to Councillor Flynn. Oh, Councillor Flynn, press your button again.
He's on. Oh, he was.
Go ahead, Councillor.
I'm leaning to 1, but I do have a question. The loss of Destination BC membership, is that temporary, or once you lose it, you can't get it back, or can you just reapply when you're ready with your plan?
Corporate officer, do you know that?
Through your worship, in my discussions with Destination BC, there's no guarantees. If you're out, you might not get back in, and I was not clear on exactly what the process of getting back in would look like, but there might not even be a seat at the table because they did indicate it's oversubscribed as it is.
Okay, so clearly they've said option 1 keeps that membership, and as long as we're working towards a long-term strategy, even if our solution is short-term, we keep our membership.
Corporate officer?
Through your worship, yes. So all indications suggest that as long as we have a strategy for managing visitor information services before we sort of get kicked out, then we're fine. They did not outline to me what a strategy needed to include. However, I do know that Margaret McCormick is very well versed in these matters, so I trust that she would know exactly what we need. That's not to say that another service provider could not achieve that. We just don't know.
Okay, and I'll wait to hear from others because I do have some comments and thoughts. But I just wanted to know the answer to that question because I wanted to understand how important that is in the tourism world, and I think it's fairly important.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Cannon.
Thank you.
Just press your button, Councillor Cannon. Oh boy. We're having some technical difficulties. Go ahead.
Probably because I'm Councillor Eliason. So I guess option number 1, I think it's fortunate for us that Margaret McCormick is close by and available, and she does have expertise in this, doing strategic planning and, you know, planning long range so that we could keep our DBC. And the fact that she worked for Destination BC, she knows it in and out, and it's handy for us that we reached out to her, and you know, she's kind of given us some tight timelines that she can meet to do this work for us. I guess when I look at this, because the spring is going to be here before we know it, so we really need to put something together in the short term, really, for the next tourism season. I would like to see us go with option 1 and get her to look at what that looks like if the city can give a basic level of visitor services, you know, from City Hall, whether, you know, we have office space that we can use, taking advantage of summer university students in the summer when the tourism time is busy. I know it came up at our meeting, you know, looking at that, if we did have it out of City Hall and we have tax time, July long weekend going into that, what does that look like? You know, different things in a report looking at those options. I mean, we could be creative and set up a tent, you know, something outside on the edge of city property to accommodate our visitors. I mean, this is a beautiful spot to have visitors come, City Hall and the parks nearby. So I think it's an important step to get Margaret to do this short-term strategy for us, and I think she's very knowledgeable in that field. So I would support option number 1 with kind of looking at how that looks with City Hall, rolling it out here.
Thank you, Councillor Cannon. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. Just thinking, did I have a question? Yeah. So they indicated, DBC indicated that there was a grace period. Did they say how long we had to put something together before they would turf us from their membership?
Corporate Officer.
Your Worship, DBC wants to talk to me in November to find out what's going on. So I don't know what the ultimate end date is, but if we have a plan of action at that point, then I believe that they will
buy us some time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery.
Yes, thank you, Worship. And, you know, when I look at these, they're not mutually exclusive options, and I think, you know, they all speak to how we proceed with this. The reality is that we're in a real interim phase here. We're navigating COVID. We're navigating the end of the previous contract. I'm leaning towards option 1, and I have a question about that in a second. I think in the long run, that will, or in the very narrow run, that'll also determine whether we do this in-house, whether we go, and it's my conceptual thinking right now, that we go to a contracted management position. But I think anything along those steps, we need to go to RFP. So I'm leaning to option number 1. My question through you, Your Worship, to staff about option number 1 is, I'm assuming we're talking a direct award, and what is the threshold for a direct award?
Corporate Officer, or perhaps CAO, the threshold for direct award.
There is no threshold, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lavery.
Yes, there is.
I've learned something here. Thank you very much. It's always a good day when you fine-tune your knowledge. I support the staff recommendation of, I don't know authentic experiences, but I think that we need to move forward, and I'm comfortable, given what I've heard of option number 1 about going forward, but I do really want a vigorous, thorough discussion about how to proceed after that. And if, again, not my bias, but my thinking is right now a long-term strategy with the provider, and an RFP process to do that. I don't see that being inconsistent with going with option number 1. And the other thing we mentioned, and the staff report referred to it, is the, you know, we'll see what happens out of the SERP grant funding, of whether there's a joint endeavor about mobile service system funding through the grant. So I think we need, again, I think option number 1 captures the next interim step.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Councillor Wallace Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. I too am leaning towards option one. I really see 3 steps here. The first is work on the strategy. DBC's asked us for it. We know we need it. The past strategy would appear to me didn't work, given the outcome that the decision we made on that outcome. The second is we need delivery of services, whether that's in-house or out-of-house. That would also come directly from the strategy. So I don't see how we could move to 3 without doing 1 first. And if we hire the expert to help us with that, who knows all of the players, it's a pretty complicated field, I think, with EDS and MRDT and Shuswap Tourism and so on and so forth. So I'm heavily leaning toward option 1.
Great, thank you, Councillor Wallace Richmond. Councillor Eliason.
I'd make a motion to approve option 1.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Cannon. Thank you. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Eliason?
Yeah, I would make a motion with the funds coming from the tourism budget from this year that was unspent, the BIC.
Thank you.
If anyone's wondering. I'd like to give a lot of credit to Aaron and to all of the people who've been involved with the amount of work that's been done so far. We started this early in the year, and we've done many of the things that one would do in a major tourism review. And we are part of, I would say, 4 different tourism functions within the city and outside of the city, whether it be visitor information, MRDT, downtown Salmon Arm, and Shuswap Tourism. So, there's a few different arms operating outside of each other. And so it sort of brought into focus what we're doing on a bigger scale. Ideally, what we get in this report, in my perfect world, is a recipe on how to deliver for the next 12 to 24 months visitor information services in the Shuswap. Where we go beyond that, it's a totally different conversation. But short term, I equate it to a station wagon family vacation. So you load up the station wagon and you're going to Alberta to visit your grandma, or you're going to make a big summer trip to Vancouver Island to visit your cousins. And everybody's been on a station wagon vacation because that was before minivans, but that's what COVID's got. Medium term, we're going to be looking at medium trips. Maybe you're going across Canada. Maybe you're going to go to Winnipeg and see the forts, the museums. But that's a medium trip, and that's medium term. Long term, our long-term plan is going to be long-term trips again. It's international vacations and international visitors. So short term, we need a short-term plan for the best delivery of services. We've eliminated one of the costs in our Shuswap Tourism, or in our visitor information, which is the fixed cost of a bricks and mortar location. How do we best deliver visitor services to our locals, for our mostly local visitors and regional visitors? And that's what hopefully option 1 will provide us. And that's the recipe that I'm looking for, is how to cook that turkey and do it as best as we can from someone with experience. So I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eliason. Councillor Flynn.
Councillor Lindgren? Oh, no.
Just to be clear, when the staff person who spent all their time on this and the 2 council representatives spent all their time on this are recommending option 1, I'm going to pick option 4. No, all kidding aside, option 1 I completely support. I think a lot of time has been spent on this, and as much as COVID has been a horrible thing for the world, this is one example where perhaps COVID couldn't have come at a better time for us. We eliminated a physical visitor info center prior to summer because we weren't sure we were getting the value we needed and people were using it. We were looking at virtual options, and as it turns out, it couldn't have been a better time to be without a physical visitor info center than this year. I think option 1 makes the most sense. It keeps DBC. I think this person has significant understanding of tourism because it's very complicated, and I just hope they are aware of all of our components. Tourism Shuswap, who is the regional marketing and branding, MRDT, which is more salmon arm focused and has spent significant money on tourism initiatives. And then obviously our special events coordinator and marketing at EDS. My vision long-term is we won't need a separate physical location. Downtown Salmon Arm, as the rep at Downtown Salmon Arm, the last board meeting, they said the biggest issue with not having a visitor info center has been people needing a washroom and stopping in and now needing to go to businesses in town and things like that. So COVID has complicated that. And not having the physical visitor info center. Personally, I think we make sense to have some smaller satellite visitor info centers, perhaps at the arena, perhaps at City Hall. We've built 2 that are set up to have kiosks and information, and there's an application going forward for that. I think having summer students for 4 months traveling around the community. I think we're on the right path. I think we saved money, and it couldn't have been a better time to move away from a big physical structure with significant costs, and I think option 1 is the best way to give us the way forward. So I will vote very much in support and look forward to where it goes from there.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. Just wanted to clarify, no threshold for sole sourcing. I could have sworn, I don't have time to look back through minutes obviously, but that when one of our discussions came up on whether or not we could sole source it or we had to put out an RFP, that it had to meet a certain financial threshold. If it was over a certain amount of money for the contract, that it had to be put out to contract for RFP. Is that, am I remembering that wrong or misinterpreting something?
CAO?
Your worship, we do have a purchasing policy which is approved by council, and that gives spending limits to various staff. As far as sole sourcing, there is a limit of $5,000 in that policy where it says we should go out and get quotes. So that's perhaps what you're referring to.
Okay. So that wouldn't apply in this case then?
Well, we're asking council to endorse it essentially.
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you for the clarification there. Any other comments from council? Okay, I'll just close discussion before I call a question. And first of all, I would like to thank the corporate officer, Councillor Eliason, Councillor Cannon, and those in the community who have done all the work to get us to this point. I agree with Councillor Flynn. I think under your guidance, the decisions this council has made as far as tourism goes has been the right one so far. We know that the cost of the Tourist Information Center is $140,000 a year. We know that from March till August, when it was open this year, the number of visitors to the visitor information was down 85% from a normal year. And we do know that there was a downward trend even without COVID. I've been in touch with different municipalities, especially up and down the Okanagan, just to talk to them about what they're thinking tourism-wise. Everyone is in the same boat. Nobody knows, because nobody knows what's going to happen COVID-wise. And so it's very difficult to predict. And Councillor Eliason's analogy of short, medium, and long is correct. The challenge is no one knows how long the short term is going to be. Short term might be 5 years, could be a year. Nobody knows. So I think it's a good idea to have an expert, especially someone who is connected to Destination BC and is knowledgeable about what's happening in tourism all over the province, help us. We have some money that we saved, so it makes sense. So I will certainly support the motion as well. Councillor Lavery is quite right. The discussion, the long-term discussion that council's going to have here at this table is going to be after we get that report back. We'll have the information then, and then we will be able to decide on a short-term direction at least. All right, I will call a question. All those in favor? Thank you. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Corporate Officer. We will move forward to 9.5. Director of Engineering and Public Works, Community Economic Recovery Infrastructure Program, Park and Walkway Lighting Project. We have a proposed motion. If I can get a mover and a seconder, that will get conversation underway. Councillor Cannon, thank you. Councillor Lindgren seconds. I'll pass it over to the Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Thank you, Your Worship. So at the time of the writing of this report, we were still in discussion with the Economic Development Society on whether or not they could have applied independently for their grant application. It turns out, we found out on Thursday that they will be submitting their own grant. And so that allows the city to submit two grants, or two applications, sorry. So this is for the Community Economic Recovery Infrastructure Program. It's a provincial grant, which is 100% funded up to $1 million. And so looking at the criteria of the grant, we feel that the following two projects are the best fit in two different areas. One is the parkway lighting, and that would be for Blackburn, the Life Skills Park pathway, as well as McGuire Lake. We've had lots of requests in the past for these areas to be lit, and it does fit with the safe outdoor activities and essentially meeting that for COVID. The second project is the 13th Avenue Southwest Industrial Park redevelopment, which is essentially the extension of sewer system to that area. And this is the West Side Industrial Park where Salmon Arm Ready Mix, Tech Creek, Jade Line, and Andrew Sherritt are located, Bill's Bottle Depot, etc. And so we see this as basically this infrastructure will help encourage either obviously the existing businesses, but it might also encourage new business and diversify some economic opportunities in this area. And again, it fits the grant criteria. So these projects would be the two applications that staff are recommending, and the project totals for the lighting, $265,000, and for 13th Avenue Industrial Park is $985,000. And just to note, the 13th Avenue project has been on the specific referral budget list since 2009. It continues to come forward from that area as a specific request. And that project would align itself with the construction of the TCH West project as well.
Great, thank you very much. I'll open it up for questions from council, starting with Councillor Flynn.
Just a quick question to staff. We're applying under the Community Economic Recovery, the SARA program. Do you feel both of these are under number 1 or number 4 in the 4 streams, or are they separate?
Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Your Worship, the parkway lighting we feel would fall under the Community Economic Resilience.
Right.
And the second one would be Rural Economic Recovery, potentially.
Perfect, so it's good news that they're under 2 separate. And then economic development is applying for theirs, and that would be under destination development, I would think.
Yes, that's correct, because it's the signage, the signage plan, as well as the funding of some students, I believe, for the tourism.
And then if Haney applies, like they talked about, that's under 3. So that's good news that we're having so many apply, and they all seem to be under separate streams. So I'm going to stay optimistic on this.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. I fully support going ahead with these grants. I think this is a great idea. My only comment is that I would be remiss if I didn't mention that nature lovers and wildlife and people that like to look at the sky have a serious problem with too much lighting. And McGuire Lake is an area that's really sensitive to that because of the bird life and the turtles and that sort of thing. And so I don't know what the actual 50 walkway lights would look like, but I'm reminding you that Sabnus and others have put forward information that would suggest that we need to keep these pointed down close to the ground, particularly not to disturb the wildlife in McGuire Lake.
Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. Other comments from councillors on this motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll make my comments. First of all, thank you to staff. I think it's, whenever you apply for grants, it has to be strategic. And I think they've met the criteria here, both in amounts, 1,260, 1,980, also in streams. The projects are quite different from one another, and the projects from the community are also quite different from one another. All of them are good. So we'll put forward our best foot and hope that one or more of them gets approved. I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, that passes unanimously. We'll move to item 10, introduction of bylaws. The first one is City of Salmon Arm Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw, number 4410. R. Curl, 1050 and 1091 18th Street Northeast, HR to HC. This is first reading. If I can have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Eliason moves, Councillor Lavery seconds. Thank you. Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. This is bylaw number 4410, which proposes to redesignate 1050 and 1091 18th Street Northeast from high-density residential to highway commercial. The purpose of the proposal and bylaw change is to support an associated rezoning, which is bylaw number 4411.
Thank you. So, Council, as you know, we'll be looking at 4411 next, assuming if this one goes ahead. I'll open it up to councillors for any comments or questions. Okay, we've had significant conversation around this at planning. All right, all those in favor? Thank you, that passes unanimously. We'll now look at the associated zoning amendment bylaw 4411. It's same address and first reading again. Director of Development Services, do you have anything to add?
Yes, Your Worship, the proposed zoning is C6, Highway Service, Tourist Commercial. The present zoning is R5, which only allows high-density residential, and the person who just purchased the property would like to develop a mixed-use ground floor office building with upper floor residential units. The owner is interested in purchasing 18th Street from the city, and if council approves that purchase price, a road closure bylaw will be coming forward to you, which will be a public process. If 18th Street is incorporated in the development plan, it would give a lot more options for development of the property. If it stays as a street, it has to be upgraded to the local street standard, including a cul-de-sac at the southern end, and it would require setbacks off either side of it, thus reducing the development potential significantly. So C6 zoning is proposed, and first reading of bylaw 4011 is on the table.
Great, thank you very much. Councillors, any comments or questions around the first reading of this zoning bylaw? Did we get a mover and second? We did. Okay, I will call the question then. All those in favor? Thank you, that passed unanimously.
Your Worship, we need to have a mover and seconder for that.
Councillor Flynn, you can't fool that guy. Councillor Flynn, would you move that?
I'll move that.
And Councillor Cannon seconds. All right. I'll call the question. All those in favor? You caught me. That was my third mistake.
I'm not keeping track.
You run out of fingers. Passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go to item 10.3, City of Salmon Arm 5-year financial plan amendment bylaw, number 4423, first, second, and third reading. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Wallace Richmond, seconded by Councillor Cannon. Thank you. Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This amendment is to reflect council resolutions made thus far in the year and to redirect allocations between budget accounts. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you very much. Councillors, any questions for the Acting Chief Financial Officer? Councillor Flynn.
Just under the background, so I support the motion and very clear. Staff's done a great job moving things around as usual. But under background, it says the 2020 final budget requires an amendment to reflect council resolutions. That makes sense, and to redirect allocations. But it says, please note the parked projects due to COVID were not removed from the original budget and therefore have no budget impact. Most of those are still parked, am I correct? But we didn't remove them, we just parked them. And will that be dealt with in surplus moving things forward next year?
Chief Financial Officer.
So that is correct. Those items were considered parked. They were not removed from the budget. A number of them were put back into the budget. A few council meetings ago, Rob brought, or the Director of Engineering and Public Works brought a report to council to unpark a few of those items.
Yeah.
And yes, if there are projects that have remained undone, those will likely be carried forward to the 2021 budget.
Okay, thank you. And just a comment, to me, this is an opportunity to again thank the taxpayers of Salmon Arm. We haven't had to, or we may be able to bring pretty much everything that was parked back and get it done, because although I was extremely pessimistic, the percentage of taxes paid for the end of September was not any less than previous years. So again, the taxpayers of Salmon Arm should be complimented, because we haven't had to make significant cuts to the budget.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Flynn. Other comments or questions? I'll just follow up a little bit on Councillor Flynn's comment. An example project that was parked was the $200,000 asphaltic overlay section that was to pave Foothill from 50th to 30th. And we ran out of time, so that will roll over and be in the 2021 budget. This, I think, is extremely good news, because there are some other projects like that. And as you know, we don't know what 2021 is going to bring. So at least we will have monies in there for some capital projects that we were not able to complete this year. So that is a bonus. The question I have for the acting chief financial officer, the revenue and then rollover expense for the school tax requisition residential and then school tax requisition non-residential, those amounts, so the school tax requisition for residential, did all of the residents in Salmon Arm pay only $387,105 towards school tax? Do I read that right?
No, that is the increase in the amount from the original budget that we had back when the budget was approved in October of 2020.
Okay, that explains it for me. So then the school tax requisition for non-residential, the less $1 million, 1.2, is due to the 50% payment by non-residents on school tax requisition.
That is correct.
Okay, now I understand it. Thank you very much. Councillors, any other questions on this item, the amended 2020 budget? All right, I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Acting Chief Financial Officer. We'll now go to reconsideration of bylaws. 11.1, City of Salmon Arm Fee-for-Service Amendment Bylaw, number 4418, sewer rates, final reading. If we can have a motion, moved and seconded. Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Lavery. Thank you. Acting Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This bylaw number 4418 has been updated to reflect the approved 2% increase in sewer user fees for 2021 and 2022.
Thank you. I know Council's very familiar with it. We're at final reading now. Councillors, any last questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we'll move to correspondence, informational correspondence. Items on page 12, 125. I'll open it up to any councillors that wish to speak to any of the items. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you. Item 5.1, the letter from Lana Fitt, the manager, EDO of the Salmon Arm Economic Development Society. I believe Lana is online. I can't tell who the 6 are, but Lana, I think, is one of those 6. Is that correct? She had said she was going to, yeah, there we go. I would like to make a motion that provides direction to staff that the city become the flow-through for this food hub grant. Councillor Eliason was,
We'll get that motion.
yeah.
Seconder to the motion, Councillor Lavery, thank you. Speaking to the motion, Councillor Flynn.
Okay, I can probably leave Councillor Lavery and Eliason to speak to it better than I can, but they've been significantly involved both behind the scenes and on committee to work to get this very good news grant for the city of Salmon Arm of $500,000, significant grant. We would just be the mechanism to receive the grant, and we would not be required to do anything else except receive and show how it's spent, I believe. I can let Lana speak to that a bit more, or Councillor Lavery or Councillor Eliason. Very similar to MRDT funds. They come in, the province requires that the city handle those and report on them, and I think this is very similar. So I think this is great news, and there's been a lot of work done by a lot of people, and I ask council to support the city as the conduit for these funds, because it's what the province requires.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. I'll maybe just ask the Chief Financial Officer if she has any comments around the motion.
No, I do not have any comments.
Okay, this is a normal procedure, Chief Financial Officer, that we've done many times before with grants that flow through the city.
We have done two recently with the EDS for the food hub, one for the feasibility study and one for the business plan.
All right, thank you very much. Other councillors who may wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. Oh, no, this is about the next one.
Another item, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Just hang on to that. Sure. Councillor Canada, do you want to speak to this item? Okay. Is there any others that wish to speak to this item? Comment, Councillor Lavery.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And again, I reiterate what Councillor Flynn, as he summarized it. There's been a lot of hard work on this. A lot of hard work actually preparing for an RFP, and then suddenly at the last moment, it's a direct award. We were talking about direct awards earlier. A significant opportunity, incredibly short timelines. There's no exposure to the city. We have done this model before, just not for $500,000. But again, there's no exposure to the city. The Food Hub and EDS are responsible for meeting targeted deadlines and deliverables. They submit them to the province for authorization and recognition. The province then transfers the money to the city as is needed, and then the city would transfer that to EDS. So I fully support it. It's a great opportunity, and so I support it. Lana did mention it in her letter, the working group, just so folks know, the working group that's currently there, that I currently sit on, was mainly involved, and I would suggest the expertise was involved for the application for the feasibility study as well as the business plan. I'm more than willing to, the will of council, to carry on with this, but I think there's also been discussion at the working group that when it gets to the implementation phase, I think we need a broader table with food production expertise, and I would stay on until that point. I think the current working group has got a lot of knowledge about applying for grants and governance and suggestions of the way to go, but actual food implementation is another matter, and I look forward to that conversation coming up in the spring. So please support.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery, and thank you for your role, and Councillor Eliason and Flynn's role in assisting with getting the grant. Okay, I don't see any other speakers to this motion, which is just really for the city to receive and flow the grant through, so I will call a question. All those in favor? Thank you, Councillor Eliason. That passes unanimously. Councillor Flynn, did you have other items you wish to speak to?
I'll wait.
Okay.
Any are missed.
Okay, Councillor Cannon.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, press your button again. It's gonna read it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, number 8. It's
Yes, please.
it's a letter from Dr. Bonnie Henry looking for municipalities to offer out some of our bigger centers, whether it's the community center or the arena for immunization. So I wondered if we could reach back out to them and say that our facilities would be available if they want to do the clinics, immunization clinics. They used to do immunization clinics before in bigger centers, but they haven't for the last bit. But so I guess I'd like to make a motion that we reach out.
All right. So your motion, Councillor Cannon, is to reach out and respond that yes, the city would make available. Yeah, at the and they say they will cover the cost of spaces, including cleaning. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Flynn. Councillor Cannon, do you wish to speak further to the motion?
No, I think it would be in our best interest to help out for immunization clinics, because I know the health unit is very booked up, and this would serve our community well.
Okay, and I know that we have Darby here, Boyd, with us. I don't know if Darby, is there any information you'd like to share with council regarding this, or any reason why you think this might not be a good idea? Yeah, if you don't mind coming to the mic, it might be useful for council.
Through your worship, no, I don't want to give any information why it's not a good idea. I would just say that we are filling up fairly quickly at the rec center because there's quite a demand. There's not a lot of facilities available around town for meetings, or the auditorium. It's getting booked up quite a bit. So we could, depending on the schedule, we could move some groups around. But that would be the only thing I would say.
Okay, thank you very much.
So we could either use like the community center or the Shaw Center as well, like one or the other.
Thank you, Councillor Canada. Thank you, Darby. Any other comments or questions around that motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Great, that passes unanimously. Councillor Canada, did you have any other items?
I'll leave the others for
Okay,
other
we'll go to
councillors.
Councillor Lavery.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I said number 3, but I'll start off with number 10. I'll just make sure that I'll be talking to the school again about youth council, and I'm pretty sure they know about the invitation at Youth Parliament, but I'll reinforce with them about that on number 10.
Thank
I
you very
specifically wanted to talk about number 3, which is a letter from the Smiths regarding short-term rental housing. And just if staff could respond, I'll respond to that, and if staff could respond back to them. We are very shortly anticipating the community housing report that'll be coming to council. There's all sorts of policy implications that are going to be in front of us to consider. And the issue of short-term rental and how to proceed with it, and the cost of monitoring it and all that sort of stuff will be part of an ongoing discussion. So I just want to recognize the receipt of the letter, and if we could let the Smiths know about that, and perhaps they could stay tuned.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Lavery, for both of those items, as well as item 10, helping us look after that piece. Councillor Lavery, do you have any others?
Well, that's it. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. Item 4 is a letter questioning the rationale and the reasoning behind the festival, the Pride Arts and Awareness Festival that was held 2 weeks ago. I wanted to acknowledge that we have provided a response, and in that response we emphasize following regulations and making sure that we're doing everything we can to build a safe, inclusive, and kind community.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wallace-Richmond, and thanks for helping craft that response endorsed by Council. And it is also a part of the informational correspondence. Do you have any other items, Councillor Wallace-Richmond, you would like to speak to?
Yes, items 1 and 2, Your Worship. Would it be possible to send a letter from Georgia McLeod to the SA Rec Society Board? And equally, the Robertson letter regarding activities at the dog park could go to bylaw and maybe RCMP, just to fan it out to see what we might be able to do to improve that, and maybe Fall Fair.
Okay, I think item 2 could go to Fall Fair, bylaw, and RCMP. Item number 1, Councillor Wallace-Richmond, we do have Darby Boyd here with us. So it might even be more direct just to have Darby come and speak to us about that item.
Wonderful. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Darby, do you mind coming forward?
Thank you. I haven't read item number 1, but I am aware of the, if this is related to walking at the Shaw Center? Is that?
It's actually, the request is to walk at the indoor memorial sports complex, but if you can talk about walking anywhere, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Through your worship. In terms of walking at the indoor memorial or the memorial indoor sports field complex, it would be very difficult for us to do that. Right now, we strictly restrict the number, we restrict the number of keys, and also there's intrusion alarms and access codes to that facility to very specific users. So to open it up to the general public, it's not a staffed facility. So it would be difficult to monitor what happens in there. In the past, when that facility has been left open during the summers, we find that we also have problems with people that shouldn't be in there spending the night and trying to stay warm and damage to the facility at the same time. So it's probably not our best option. But we do want to let everybody know that we are planning on opening the Shaw Center for walking, which has been a traditional place for people to walk during the winter in our community, as everyone here knows, I believe. We've had to come through a few sort of issues around the mass gathering restrictions from the PHO, but with some clarification a few weeks ago, we've determined that for certain times of the day, it would be conducive to open the building for walking to the general public. So what our proposal is that we will open the Shaw Center to the public on November the 2nd. We're planning on letting the walkers come in from Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. until 2 p.m. each day, Monday to Friday. There will be a sign-in sheet upstairs near the concourse where the walkers come in the building, a sign-in sheet and for contact tracing, of course. Essentially, I guess it would just be a matter of the general protocols which are posted on the building, which is don't come if you're sick, social distancing, all of the standard COVID sort of restrictions that we would ask them to adhere to. Yeah, I think that kind of sums up what our plan was. So on November 2nd, we welcome them back to the Shaw Center, if that hopefully alleviates this concern.
Great. Thank you very much, Darby. Councillor Wallace-Richmond, any questions around that or comments?
No, Your Worship. Thank you.
Great. Any other councillors want to comment or question? Okay, I didn't know it was about that item. But you are next. Darby, thank you very much. First of all, I know I've had lots of questions about the walking, and during these COVID times, of course, as the weather gets colder, it's great for people to have that spot, and it's going to be a safe place. Sounds like by the way you've described it, and so we'll get that information out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Lindgren, it's your turn. Just press your button there. Yep.
Just some information in regards to item number 2, the dog leash park. That's just another reason to make sure that we educate the public, because it's not a dog leash park. It's not a dog park at all. Though people like to use it for that. And so the Fall Fair Committee has been talking about this particular issue for quite some time now, the homeless problem. Let's see, they hired a security firm that's supposed to be walking the grounds, and it's been on the agenda for several months in a row now that they're not entirely sure how homeless people could be living there if the security company's doing their job. And so they're trying to figure out how they can ascertain that there is a walkthrough happening every night. And so far they haven't come up with a good solution to that, other than one of us camping out in the dog park on the fairgrounds to see what's actually happening. So it's a significant issue, and I'm not sure. I was hoping that the city could provide some information about whether or not we've had any, photos or contact with people that are living down there. I know I've heard that there are a couple of new people in town that are sort of less amenable to working things out than the rest of the homeless people that we have. So just wondering if you could provide any information about that.
CIO, do we have any information that we could share here regarding that question?
I don't have any more information at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, if we are able to ascertain through the security company what's actually happening and how many people are there and how big the problem is, I'll be sure to bring that information forward. The other item is item number 7.
Just before you leave that, can I just comment
Sure.
to you? First of all, I think everybody in the community appreciates SASLA allowing that to be a dog park.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so heavily used.
It is.
And so I think, whenever we have a problem, we have to remember that 99% of the people that go down there are doing everything they're supposed to be doing and having a lot of fun. So thanks to SASLA for enabling that.
Yeah, before COVID hit, the Fall Fair Committee and SASLA were talking about having an educational sort of fair, I guess, at the Fall Fairgrounds to talk to people about proper etiquette with their dogs and what we might need to do to make sure that area doesn't get locked up during non-event times and remains accessible. So I have a feeling that maybe in the spring, when COVID hopefully is less of an issue and we can be outdoors again safely, that they'll bring that forward again and do that
Sounds
education
great.
piece.
And I think their education piece, it sounds like the dogs aren't causing a problem.
People are.
So I'll let you jump on to the next item.
Item number 7, Jared King is the principal at South Canoe Elementary School. I know this school well. I was there year before last, I guess it must have been, as an education assistant. And Klahani Park is extremely well used by this school. There's probably a group from the school that's there at least every week, and I would say multiple times a week. There's one class or another there. At one time or another, you'd find a whole class of students there from 9 o'clock in the morning right until bell time. That just get back to the school in time for the bell. And we walked, I think it was 9 kilometers or something with the grade 5 class one day, which was a long ways for me. So, and I'm aware of how big a problem this can be when an 8-year-old needs to go to the bathroom right now and there isn't a place to go. And so I assume that the problem here is that we have great washrooms there, but I assume they're flush toilets and it's not heated and we can't have them open in the winter. Is that correct?
Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Your Worship, that's correct. The facilities would need a budget amendment in order to winterize them and operate them for the full year. So there are other implications there.
Yeah, so I guess my question is this a reasonable request? Is a porta potty a viable option in the wintertime? I know they also have liquid in them, so I don't know how that's possible without them freezing during the winter, but are there any options available?
Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Your Worship, we're fine with this option. I mean, obviously the porta potties are capable of working in the winter. They put antifreeze in them, so it shouldn't be an issue. It's just that it would be the responsibility of the school to manage the pump outs, and if there's any damage, we wouldn't be responsible for any of that.
Right. So go ahead.
Director of Engineering and Public Works, do you need a motion from council, or are you just gonna?
Absolutely, we would need a motion.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve that the school, at their own cost and responsibility, provide a porta potty at Klahani Park
Okay, working with our staff?
for the winter, yes.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cannon. Thank you. Councillor Lindgren, do you wish to speak further to the motion?
No, I think it's explanatory. Every one of us has had a kid that's got to go.
Any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Flynn, do you want to speak to that motion? Yes, please. Please go ahead.
Okay, normally when we allow use, we speak to insurance and proper liability insurance. I'm assuming the school district will have that, but that will be part of the motion. Here's my insurance hat.
Thank you for that. Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Yes, Your Worship, we would send out the standard letter, and that would include insurances as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. That passes unanimously. Councillor Lindgren, do you have any other items? Okay. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship. Most of the ones I wanted to speak to have been dealt with, and I did want to comment on item 2 during that discussion, but
Okay, please go ahead.
and also item 3, so let me just make sure I get them right, going back to the correspondence. Yeah, I too have to say that SASLA needs to be thanked and appreciated for allowing that dog leash park. I actually think it's busier than the new addition to our recreational community, the Frisbee course. But I'm amazed, Councillor Eliason, at the fact that that parking lot is almost always full, even since it snowed. So it's the same at SASLA, and I do think they need to be thanked. But I was wondering why this letter wouldn't be referred to the Social Impact Advisory Committee in light of the homelessness issue. And I guess as the actual owners of the land, and SASLA leases it, and it's great that they've hired security, but does the security person have any more ability than our bylaw officer or our RCMP to remove people? I think it's great that they've hired security, but I guess I'm wondering about the implications of that, and does that security person have the ability to remove homeless people? Because then maybe we should be hiring a security person for downtown and yeah.
That's what that security person
So
does.
it's just about reporting it, okay. But I think that issue again, I mean, it's nothing new. Homelessness, we seem to talk about it at just about every meeting now. I think that letter should be referred to the Social Impact Advisory Committee as well.
Okay.
And then item 3, Councillor Lavery spoke to it, and that something's coming forward from the Housing Task Force, and there'll be all kinds of policy potential implications. But just anecdotally, in Toronto, rent for downtown buildings has plummeted in monthly cost in the last 4 months because Airbnb is being pulled out of the market due to COVID, and people are now looking to rent permanently. So we've heard the concerns, and the Director of Development Services has told us it's very difficult to police. But I do think that it's important that we do look at this in our long-term policy, because lots of people in the actual business of hotels and things have been questioning how many Airbnb we have as well. I think that might go down, but it is an issue. And then finally, item 6, one that nobody's talked about. Does council need to make a motion? It says action required. It's got an A beside it. Do we need to make a motion to support that or allow that? Or it seems it looks like it can happen without us, but it says A beside it. So I'm wondering why it says action required.
Let's just check with the CAO. Would you like a motion for that item?
Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cannon, second. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. The Halloween treat trail, because of the sheer numbers, is not happening. We said no to a Christmas parade. The holiday train is not happening. But this seems like a very small scale of people walking the streets. It's kind of like an art walk, going to specific spots, and I think I think it's a great idea and positive, so I ask for support.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
And then item 8, I didn't speak to it at the time, but it just seems so vague to me what they're asking, and they say your local public health officials will be contacting us directly. Will they pay for the facility, or are we expected to give it for free? Who's organizing all that?
It says the health authorities will cover the cost of using the spaces, including cleaning.
And do they have the sufficient staffing? When Councillor Cannon said it seems very difficult to get immunization, that will be part of a project, I guess?
I think, Councillor Flynn, the way I read this, I think our motion is good.
Yeah.
I think it's a form letter to all mayors across the province. And so, of course, denser areas are going to have a greater need. So they may or may not come to us, but it is a form letter.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any other items? All right, I think we were quite thorough there. Thank you very much. We will go to presentations. I see Tracy's out there and Dolores. Welcome. Nice to have you two with us. Would you like to come forward and present for us? We've got you kind of on two topics, well, A and a B kind of, but please feel welcome and give you 15 minutes or so as needed.
Thank you, Mayor Harrison, and thank you, Council. I do have a co-presenter, Kate Fagervik, who is on the Zoom call. And I'm not sure how...
Hello!
Oh, that is definitely
Kate
her,
you're thinking
yes.
of? Okay. Hi, Kate. Nice to have you with us.
Hi. Thank you.
So am I to advance the slides, or are you going to advance it? Just let me know. Okay. So I am very pleased to be here to present to you a very quick version of the amazing Pride Project Arts and Awareness Festival that we just launched this year. So we formed a committee about a year and a few months ago with the purpose of presenting an arts-informed festival to celebrate the LGBTQ2S+ community in Salmon Arm and to bring awareness to the various issues within that community. When COVID hit, we had to make some very serious decisions. We thought about completely canceling all of our amazing plans, but instead we decided to focus in on education, training, and awareness on a digital platform and provide still a couple of in-person events, but mainly do a whole lot of digital work. And I must say, I think it was the best decision and the best opportunity to really get down there and build a foundation of education first. I am thrilled that we had a couple, well, it's really hard to say that I'm thrilled that we got a couple of emergency grants because we did get specific digital funds from Canada Council that we were able to purchase a few pieces of equipment to be able to go forward with this plan of going digital. And we also were very lucky to have Kate. And Kate has a great number of skills and was very willing to do a lot of video work in preparation for this festival. So as we moved forward, we felt like we had a great ability as a committee, a very thoughtful committee with representation from the LGBTQ community as well as from local organizations to be able to go forward and do this really well. We also met with a few other organizations in town, and one of them was Lana Fit at Economic Development, and I'll let Kate tell you about how that went.
Yeah, we got to work with the digital transitions team over at Economic Development, Tegan, Caitlin, and Abigail, who are amazing. So this is a selection of images from one of the 6 photo shoots that Caitlin did for us for the project, working with local LGBTQ2S+ people. And out of that has resulted in a beautiful new website. So you can go to salmonarmprideproject.ca to check out what our handiwork looks like online. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. This is an example of one of the many outreach pieces that we did for the festival. We worked with Downtown Salmon Arm as well as Economic Development, and we reached out to local businesses, inviting them to participate in a Pride window display contest.
The final tally of local windows who participated is 27 businesses and organizations in town. So we were thrilled by the positive reaction of businesses, really surprised, and managed to give out a few different prizes to businesses that now get to say that they won the first ever Pride Window Contest. So that was amazing. Would you mind going to the next slide, please? And these are some examples of some of the digital offerings that you can watch at your own convenience on YouTube. So if you go to @Salmon Arm Arts Center on YouTube, you can see what we did in collaboration with Roots and Blues, with Shuswap Immigration Society, with Canadian Mental Health, with Okanagan College, just to name a few of the many collaborators that we had in our digital offerings. So as I said, you can binge watch those in your house coat at any time. Would you mind going to the next slide, please? Thank you. I'll let Tracy take it away here.
And this is our very first Pride exhibition. It was just 4 days, and we had a number of works that were collaborative works from communities that pulled together to do things that were in support of the goals of the committee. And it was stunningly beautiful. It was just an exceptional 4 days full of love and amazing stories that came out of it. I think the exhibition was not only successful in providing visual ways for people to enter into difficult conversations, but also just building that little bit of extra knowledge and understanding through terminology, through the cultural mapping project, through the pride flags wall that you see there that the Proud Grandmas did. So I think we opened a lot of doors through the exhibition. We had 316 people through the gallery in 4 days. We did have to pull our velvet rope across a couple of times because we got up to our capacity, which is very exciting. So that was brilliant. It laid a great foundation for us going forward. We have made a 3-year commitment to the project, and one of our goals was to have a significant exhibition of LGBTQ2S+ artists, and so this gave us a really great launching pad for that. And now the pop-up shop. Kate.
We, as part of our outreach with both people within the community and their allies, we did a local call for makers to create merchandise to sell in a pop-up shop. This idea came about a month and a half before the festival, so we brought it all together really quickly, and we made a bundle. So it was a great fundraiser for the gallery, and also a way that we were able to help support local makers who have been really hard hit during COVID. So we've received nothing but fantastic reviews about the shop. We see people walking around Salmon Arm wearing visible sort of, whether it's earrings or a mask or maybe a new bumper sticker on the back of your vehicle. We have these visible signs that we can now wear and place in our environments that are showing people that this was not just a flash in the pan. This is something that Salmon Arm is really committed to. So the pop-up shop was held in the new Blue Moon Room space, in the old Blue Canoe space. It's gorgeous, and we were really proud to be the first event to get to launch that new space in downtown Salmon Arm. Next slide, please. Within the shop, we were able to create sort of a cultural corner in downtown Salmon Arm. People traveled really easily in between the art gallery and the shop. And on Friday night, I scheduled some events, so we were able to take what people were learning about even deeper. We had a beautiful person come in from Kelowna to do a session with youth, and then we featured a local youth author who you can hear do a book reading on our YouTube channel, and she did a book signing, which was both personally impactful and I think really impactful for the whole community. Anyone that reads her book is receiving a gorgeous gift there. So the pop-up shop served many different purposes. And we saw youth especially returning maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day in those 4 days. So I probably had a dozen points of contact with many different youth in that time. Many saying, can this just stay here forever, please? Next slide, please. Thank you.
The Salmon Community Association was eager to get on board, like a lot of other community organizations, to help spread the word about LGBTQ2S+ awareness. So what we decided to do is bring in 4 movies that were significant topics around significant issues within the community, and following all the COVID protocols that the Salmon has in place at the Salmon Classic, we offered these movies. So I would have loved to say they were packed, but of course we don't want that. But it really was enjoyable to have the opportunity to see some of these films on the big screen, when, especially Rocket Man, that was fun. And just to know that the Salmon Community Association is behind us and is very excited about next year already. Our finale. We ended our digital content with a special Pride Sunday service. Reverend Jenny Carter was a member of our Pride committee, so she was on board with everything Pride from the start. And again, I think this is about 2 months before our actual festival. It was pitched, can we do a Pride service? And Jenny was ecstatic at the idea. She brought in a guest reverend, a man named Graham Brown Miller, who's a gay minister in the First United Church from the coast. So he came up, and you can watch what we created again on YouTube. So for us behind the scenes, this was a full day shoot. I was there from about 9:30 a.m. and I got home at about 8:30. Thankfully, I was able to bring in Marcus and Althea, so there was some support in this piece, which was awesome. And that beautiful flag that you see on the cross is another example of what people in our community came together to do. So Jenny had an idea to have color around the cross. I reached out to some of my girlfriends on Facebook, drew up a pattern, and a lot of this stuff that you see was custom made just for our first annual Pride Festival. So I think even within this church service, there was many different people coming together to show their support for Pride in many different ways. And I think I'm most proud of this piece. I'm so glad that it gets to live on YouTube so we can watch it again and again and again. Next slide, please. Yes, I've been screenshotting like a mad woman everything on the internet that people are saying about us. So we thought we'd give you a little selection of some of the organizations and local people who were excited to write on Facebook about Pride. Some of these might be off of our Instagram comments. So, I mean, you don't have to read the screen, but we'll just give you a moment there. Here's a couple more. One of the most impactful ones that I'd like to draw your attention to is in the bottom left corner. Carmen Cron is a beautiful writer in town and a member of our committee, an artist who displayed her work in the exhibition Pride. And when she writes that now that the allies have gone home, the festival is over and she doesn't feel safe anymore, we feel like that's a good sort of place to end on as we're wanting to talk to you about crosswalks today. And so the final slide of the presentation, I've provided you with our mission statement. And we did come together as a committee, an intersectional committee, really wanting to focus on a few significant goals and use the arts to achieve those goals. But as you can see, we are really wanting to have a focus on proper research, education, equity, social justice, and safety. So creating safe space was a significant goal of the festival and will be going forward as well. And so that does lead me right to item B, which is the committee's recommendation on the next public art project that recognizes LGBTQ2S+ community in Salmon Arm.
Thank you. Can I interrupt you before you go to the next one? Because councillors may want to ask you questions or make comments on the first piece.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if they do, but if they do, I'll invite them and then we'll go to part two. Councillors, we'll start with Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. So, as you know, I brought some of my students from the Storefront School down. Some of our kids are transgender, and that sparked some amazing conversations, particularly around the pink shower and getting in the pink shower and understanding about safe spaces. And so that sparked some really great conversations amongst the students themselves and between myself and the students. And one of our students came out to us for the first time at that event. Didn't make me cry then. I'm not sure why it's doing it now, but some pretty significant stuff happening for sure. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. It was about time. It's been a long time coming, and Salmon Arm's been living in the dark ages for a long time on this issue, and I'm glad to see that it's coming forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship, and I'll try not to get emotional, but my wife and I stopped in, thought it was a gallery presentation on a Friday evening, and we crashed the sponsors event. We enjoyed our time there. I think it's a great thing for Salmon Arm, and thanks to everybody who worked on this, because I've been in this community 25 years, and to me this is a special time. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Any other councillor wish to comment before Tracy goes on to the public art recommendations?
Your Worship, could I make a comment?
Yes, of course, Councillor Wallace Richmond. I'm sorry. I'm not sure how I missed you there. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking Mayor and Council for putting me on the District Arts Council. I volunteered on that committee, and I learned so much in the planning of it. But what we learned, normally you as you know, I've been involved in the art sector a little bit here and there over the years, and normally when you present a show, your audience learns. Your visitors learn. You know what's there. You know what it's about. You've done the work. You've curated it. You've prepared it. But what I didn't know is how much I would learn from the festival itself. And I think we all learned. We all found connections. We all learned things. And mostly we learned that this community is so capable of joy and pride in ourselves and in each other. And that festival changed people's lives. And I am so grateful that I had an opportunity to be a part of that, or to witness it. I don't feel like I did anything, but so it was a very special thing for me to witness as a member of the community, and to and for this council to be able to say, this is the first council that this has ever happened. I think it's going to be a highlight of my term that we were a part of this festival. So I'm very grateful, and these women have been working so hard, and they've already put another show up in the meantime. So they're worthy of our help and support, and mostly our thanks and our gratitude. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace Richmond. Is it possible just to scroll down, I'm not sure if we're at the bottom. We might well be, but I just want to make sure on the chat line. Sorry. We might be at the bottom. Yeah. Oh, okay, thank you. I'll make my comments too. First of all, much appreciate the Arts Centre, taking a leadership role, and yourself and Kate and Councillor Wallace Richmond and others in the community. I know I've been asked in the past, why doesn't the city hold a Pride Festival? And my answer was always, when the grassroots are ready, they will do it. And I think that's the most important part, actually, of this festival, is it started at the bottom and it came up from there. And that's why it will be lasting. And I think that's why it had such impact. If we did it, it's different. This came from another spot. And so I think that grassroots piece is really important. So thank you for your part. Even grassroots pieces need leadership, and leadership from the positions outside of the council table, I think, are extremely valuable. So thank you for doing that. Okay, do you want to go on to the ask now?
Certainly, although I will say that, Councillor Lindgren, it's okay. Do you know how many times I cried during that 4-day exhibition? Because my office is located really close to the terminology collaboration, and I heard families having those conversations. I heard kids coming out to their parents. I heard little kids explaining things to their grandparents. The things that I heard make me just bust, right? And I know that young people came from Kelowna, Vernon, Kamloops, and Vancouver, who grew up here and didn't feel safe here, had traumatic things happen in high school, and found out that we were doing a Pride anything and had to come and see it, had to come and see what Salmon Arm was doing, because they didn't even think it was possible here.
There was a lot of conversation amongst our students about how unsafe Salmon Arm is, and in particular school. And so it tells us we have a lot of work to do yet.
Absolutely. cultural mapping is helping us learn a lot about safe space, and one of the things we learned in the cultural mapping sessions so far is that our little corner of the downtown is considered among the safer areas of the Salmon Arms downtown. So this is why we would like to propose a tri-rainbow crosswalk at the corner of Hudson and McLeod, or at the intersection of Hudson and McLeod. We feel like between the art gallery and inclusive arts and a few other places that are very understanding and aware and promote safety and are very open are in that area. And it would be a very visual and visible message to everyone in the LGBTQ2S+ community, whether they're residents or visitors, that this is a safe space and that we are working towards a greater sense of safe space in Salmon Arm. The specific pride flags that were chosen are the traditional 6-color rainbow, that is the commonly used rainbow, and then the inclusive rainbow, which has the brown and black stripes, which are explicitly inclusive of people of color, of Black and Indigenous LGBTQ2S+ people. And then the pink and blue and white one is the transgender flag. And that is important to note that transgender people are kind of the new, like where they are right now, where people in LGB communities were about 20-25 years ago. The level of fear, the level of just unwillingness to be open and be themselves is really high. And so I think there has to be a very specific message to transgender people that we are a safe space. And it also sends a message to the businesses in the downtown, because as we learned with the window display contest, there's a lot of businesses who are very open and willing to learn more and willing to learn how to be a safe space. They just weren't sure how the rest of the downtown was feeling about it. And so the communication level can be achieved. This is one of the ways where that can be achieved, where we're saying, yeah, we're ready. We're ready to work towards safe space. So this is our beautiful Photoshop mock-up of what that could look like down there.
Thank you. There's some other items on there. Did you want to speak to those, Tracy?
So we do have, I can honestly tell you that the committee had 25 different public art ideas and recommendations. Most of those came from our youth members. But we did focus in on 2. The crosswalks was one because it is something that over the last 10 years globally, a lot of municipalities are doing, just because it is a very visible message of support. But we did have another idea that kept coming up again and again that seemed very possible, and that is to re-weld on the flagpole hardware to the top of the art gallery's flagpole so that we could fly the progress flag at the top of that pole. So the additional request is for the flagpole to be amended again and for a progress flag to be flown up there.
Great, thank you very much. Councillors, Councillor Wallace-Richmond, did you want to talk first to these items?
Yeah, so Tracy, we don't have necessarily a cost for this, is that right?
That is correct. I'm not sure of the cost of crosswalks because I know that materials being used for painted crosswalks are changing.
Yes. Yeah, and then ideally it wouldn't be done until the spring.
Right. Ideally it would be done before next year's Pride project festival.
Or next year's Pride, yeah. So what I would like to see happen, Your Worship, is that we referred this to the budget process so it gives us time to price everything out and figure out where those dollars could come from. And just to remind council that I was tasked with bringing this back to you because you were interested in what the next Pride crosswalk, what the next steps would be. And so I think what I learned is you can't talk about people without talking to them. So this is right from the community itself, and it was discussed and debated over many, many hours. So it's a solid data-based evidence at work right here in these beautiful Pride colors.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace-Richmond. So your recommendation, Councillor Wallace-Richmond, like our other budget request, is to bring it back at budget time with attached costs, and I know the staff here would come with attached costs to all of those requests that come. Is that your recommendation?
Indeed it is. Your Worship.
Okay.
Because the gallery, maybe not everyone knows that, but the gallery is a piece of the city's property, and of course the roads are city's property. So we have to know how much and how before we go ahead and decide when. And yeah.
Okay, thank you. CAO, we don't need a motion to send it to budget, do we?
No, we don't.
Okay, all right. Councillors, any other comments, either to Tracy or about the projects or questions that you might have at this time? Okay, I see none. So thank you very much for your work and for a very successful first annual Pride Festival.
Thank you very much.
Appreciated. Okay. Council statements. Councillors, if anyone has a statement they would like to make, please indicate either on the chat line or here by pressing your button. We'll start with Councillor Flynn.
EDS update. The Economic Development Society is working on their 5-year work plan, strategic plan. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. And council has been invited to participate in a Zoom meeting November 13th, I believe, after we have our informal meeting to discuss some issues. And at the end of the day, I hope everybody can be involved because EDS has done great work. It's a great group of people that really want to move our community forward economically. And I think this one time is when it should be more than just me involved. And so I ask that everybody try to find time at 9:30 on the 13th to participate. Downtown Salmon Arm, Your Worship and I, we talked about this at their next meeting. Hopefully they will be working on a summary of how the Alexander Street Square or Alexander Square, Alexander Plaza, I can't remember again what it's called, but the closure of Alexander to vehicle traffic. They're trying to get significant feedback from members and downtown businesses, and hopefully I'll have something to report at the November council meeting, because the DSA board meeting is the first week in full week in November. So I hope to have a report back on that for council's benefit.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flynn. Much appreciated. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for carrying on without me while I was on leave. I did miss a Community Futures meeting, unfortunately, but I don't think I missed any of my other committee meetings. Fall Fair Committee is working hard on some kind of Fall Fair some type of event for next year so that we're not without any event. And top of their mind right now is the security in the fairgrounds. So as I mentioned before, they're trying to figure out how to ascertain what's happening there and mitigate it. And I will come back with a Community Futures report possibly next time.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Lindgren, and welcome back. It's great to have you back. I know, I was thinking you were going from the fry pan to the fire, but I think you're actually going from the fire to the frying pan. So it's great to have you here. Other councillors, Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Oh, whoops, sorry. Thanks, Your Worship. I wanted to just briefly mention, so SILGA has been meeting again, and we're starting to think about a convention and resolution, and so on. And so I am now on the convention committee because hopefully one day Salmon Arm will get to host it in person. Also, I attended a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and the Arts Council AGM is this is tomorrow night, in fact, so I'll attend that. I'm also continuing to be on calls with the Vulnerable Population Coalition. It's a group of social agencies that work around the shoe shop, as well as monthly calls with BC Housing. So things are still happening and still working. SIAC is back in business, except we didn't achieve quorum last time. But we have been having informal conversations.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace-Richmond. Appreciate all of your work. Councillor Lavery.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And again, brought to you by the number 2. And I'm just going to start off and congratulate Councillor Sylvia Lindgren. 2 days ago, provincial results, and it really, welcome back, and it really does, it's really important to people to put their good names forward and to run. So congratulations, Councillor Lindgren. 2 years since our local election. We're at the halfway mark. It's been a great first half. There's lots more to do in the next 2 years, and it's amazing how fast it goes by. 2 months and a bit until we talk about budget 2021. They're all hard. This one's going to be particularly tough. And just so the general public knows, there'll be an opportunity to put input into the budget. But as we're heading into the second wave of COVID, we've got some pretty strenuous and tough decisions in front of us. And finally, Your Worship, I'm lucky enough this year to virtually attend the FCM Sustainable Communities conference last week. There are all sorts of good ideas there for local governments, especially when I think of 2 degrees, how local governments can actually help global warming by drawing down for their residents and for their corporate actions about going forward. And I'll refer to those as the SEEP report comes towards council. So thanks. Over and out.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lavery. Councillor Lindgren, did you have something else? Okay, yes, please go ahead.
Thanks. I just forgot to mention the SABNIS committee or board has been meeting regularly, and one of the issues that's been forefront for them is the bird viewing platform, which was destroyed by high water this year and has, because of the condition it's in now, has created quite a hazard, I think, safety hazard. And so they're in the process now of revamping their plan, how to take it down and how to get a new, safer platform built there. And they are applying for permits. I'm not sure if that's FLNRO or anyway, to build in the water affected areas. So just wanted to update you on that. Hopefully it'll be done this fall.
Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. All right, I'll just briefly, I've attended a number of annual general meetings, like you probably have, virtually or otherwise. Met with SABNIS, and I generally do go to that annual general meeting. We met under the gazebo in the Marine Park, socially distanced, and it was quite well attended. As Councillor Lindgren said, they were talking about the trail, but also much more, and they have quite a diverse board now, and there's a bit of a fallacy out there that there's not young people involved with SABNIS, but there's quite age demographic spread there now. The other AGM I attended with the Shuswap Trail Alliance, what's I think all of us have recognized, those outdoor things like SABNIS and like Shuswap Trails, especially in the last 6 months, have become extremely important. And it was interesting, the Shuswap Trail Alliance AGM was virtual, 15th annual. There was 48 participants virtually attending the AGM, which is one of the bigger ones that I've been to. And we learned the report was this in 2019, because it's 2019 AGM, they have put up 185 new signs, 9 new trails, 5 new structures, and a number of kilometers of new trail over the 2019. They also talked about 220 and especially wanted to thank Rapattack because, as you know, this winter there was a lot of blowdown everywhere. And they were extremely busy just trying to maintain the trails we have, let alone build new ones. And Rapattack was extremely helpful. Their 2019 value of their work, that includes everything, was about $600,000. So they're pouring a lot into our trails, and I know people are enjoying them. It was interesting to hear my fellow mayor, Victor Cumming. He was a guest speaker at the AGM, and Victor was very involved with the rail trail in Vernon before he was mayor and is still involved. But I think it was useful for everyone to hear because, of course, the rail trail, Sicamous to Enderby, is a big topic right now. And Victor had some very good advice, I think, for the Trail Alliance. So much enjoyed that. Councillors, is there any other items that you wish to share? Seeing none, we have a question and answer period. Do any of you in the gallery have a question you would like to ask us? Okay, any virtual questions? All right, we will recess then until 7 p.m. when we'll do our public hearings. Thank you very much. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to staff and to council. We'll see you online, folks.
See you later. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
It's kind of wild. We had the last hockey thing before. He doesn't come close to my west.
No one can beat West. I mean, some guys beat him once out of 5, but when he's healthy, you know.
Well, they might. She might.
I think a doubles player. So quick falling. He's a badminton guy. Very good. Hello, people who are here virtually. Councillor Lavery, nice to see you. Councillor Wallace-Richmond, Councillor Eliason, Brent, thank you for joining us virtually. So that clock is 1 minute fast, so we will start in 1 minute. He's looking good, isn't he? Because he has control of the thing. He's 2 places at once. Welcome, everyone. I would like to resume the City of Salmon Arm regular council meeting for October the 26th. It's nice to have you all in the gallery. Thank you so much for attending and for your social distancing and cooperation. We much appreciate it. Just to let the gallery know, we are meeting under a ministerial order which permits both virtual and in-person meeting. So some of our councillors are meeting virtually with us, Councillor Lavery, Councillor Wallace-Richmond, and Councillor Eliason. And that allows the 4 of us to socially distance here and to meet in person. We also have members of the public who are with us virtually. And during public hearings, of course, they will be given the opportunity to speak as they wish. So welcome, everyone. Councillors, we have 3 statutory public hearings in front of us this evening and then reconsideration of the bylaws. So for members of the gallery, what will happen is we'll hold the public hearings and then we will reconsider the bylaws and council will make decisions on the bylaws this evening. I'll ask councillors, first of all, if they have any disclosure of interest on any of the items. Seeing none, we'll proceed right into our hearings. And to start with, I will read an opening statement, which is required to be read under the Municipal Act. These public hearings for bylaws number 4407, 4412, and 4414 are convened pursuant to Section 464 of the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, anyone who believes their interest in property is affected by these matters will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions to council. If you wish to speak concerning the proposed bylaws, please approach council and begin your presentations by clearly stating your name and residential address. That way Barb can register what you have to say. The function of council this evening is to receive the views of the public and ask questions regarding submissions. Council will not debate the merits of these proposals with individuals. Background documents related to the bylaws and written submissions that have been received by the city are available for inspection by the public on the city website. All written submissions will be retained by the corporate officer for review by council and members of the public. To ensure that everyone has a reasonable opportunity to be heard, the following rules of procedure have been established. The first, please direct all your submissions to the chair. You'll come forward to the mic and we will clean that mic after each speaker. I'll then redirect any questions to the correct staff person. Following introduction of bylaws by city staff, the floor will be opened for presentations starting with the applicant and followed by other interested properties in order in which the chair recognizes them. Presentations will not be limited unless the submission is not relevant to the proposed bylaw. There will be 3 calls for submissions prior to the closing of the public hearings. I ask that everyone respect the views of others. Try to keep your presentations as concise as possible. Legislation does not permit council to hear or receive submissions for the public after this hearing are closed. I would ask the Director of Development Services to now explain the first proposal, which is zoning amendment number 1186B Neufeld.
Thanks, Your Worship. The application you referred to is related to bylaw number 4407, applicable to Lot 1, Plan EPP 73048, addressed at 1831 22nd Street Northeast in the Lakeview Meadows subdivision. The proposal is to rezone the property from R1 single-family residential to R8 residential suite zone to accommodate the development of a single-family dwelling and a detached suite in the backyard of the property. A building permit has been applied for the single-family dwelling and for the detached suite. The owner applicant is Brent Neufeld, and as I mentioned, the property is presently zoned R1.
Great, thank you very much. So we'll start and see if Mr. Neufeld, who's with us virtually. Brent, did you want to address council on your rezoning application?
I can just flesh it out a little bit. So we're building a detached shop out the back, and are seeking permission to build an in-law suite for my disabled mother-in-law who's going to live in that suite. And the way the property is shaped, it allows her to drive up to her door instead of having her in a traditional basement suite. She can't do stairs. So this will enable her to drive right up to her door and have access that way.
Great.
And yeah, we're just seeking permission. So in the pictures there, if you were to go back, okay, so you can see on the top left there, you can see the stairs, and so that grade where your mouse is, that would be slightly higher. So the stairs would only probably be 1 or 2 treads, but really, aside from that, that's what we're looking at.
Great, thank you very much. I'll now ask members of the public, whether you're virtual or in the gallery, a first time if there's anyone who wishes to speak to this rezoning application. I'll ask a second time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to zoning application 1186? Asking a third time. Council, before I move on to the next application, is there any questions that you have of staff or of Mr. Neufeld on this application? Councillor Flynn. Sorry.
That's me.
Councillor Lindgren.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, it's confusing with the name tags all wrong. So we were having a lively discussion today at work about suites and suite zones and parking. So could you just remind us what the requirements are for parking when somebody builds a suite?
Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, the zoning bylaw requires 1 parking space for a suite and 2 parking spaces for the single-family dwelling.
And that excludes, that's not including any street parking that might be available, and it does not include the garage, or does it include the garage?
Director of Development Services.
The parking plan can include a garage, and a lot of houses are designed for 2 vehicles in a garage, or the parking pad out in front of the garage.
Okay.
Or potentially on the side. Pretty much parking is allowed anywhere on the property. And this property in particular is 1,300 square meters. So it's definitely larger than the minimum parcel size allowed for a detached suite. There's plenty of room.
So potentially there could be 2 parking spaces in a garage and 1 outside, and that would meet the requirement?
Director of Development Services?
As long as 3 stalls are shown on the property.
And so if the homeowner chooses to use his then garage for storing all of his toys and there isn't enough parking and forces a tenant out onto the street, how does that work?
Director of Development Services?
Parking on the street is not necessarily illegal. So that's sort of another matter, but it's not encouraged.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. Is there any other questions or comments from council before I ask for a final time on this bylaw? Seeing none, I'll ask for a final time if there's any input to this bylaw before we move forward. Hearing none, we will move on to the next zoning amendment application, which is number 1187, R. Weens, 2830 25th Street Northeast, R1 to R8. Director of Development Services.
Bylaw number 4412 proposes to rezone Lot 1, Plan 2 8855 from R1 Single Family Residential to R8 Residential Suite Zone. The property is located at 2830 25th Street Northeast. There's a single family dwelling on the property that has been there for decades, and the new owner applicant is wanting to legalize one of the suites in the dwelling and is going through this rezoning process. A detached suite is not being proposed here. It's a suite within the house. The official community plan supports R8 zoning on this property.
Great, thank you very much. Again, I'll start with the applicant and offer if he wishes to speak. Mr. Weens, do you wish to come forward? Sure. Okay, come on up to the microphone. Welcome to council.
Thank you. Yeah, we just bought a older home which had a natural spot for a suite that had been operating as an illegal or a non-conforming suite for quite a while, and we just know that we want to renovate the entire house, so we thought we'd start with legalizing the suite and the main parts of the house, so it fits naturally. There's lots of parking and a side entrance, so yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll see if council has any questions for you. Councillors, do you have any questions for Mr. Weens at this time? Okay, I don't see any questions right now. Thank you very much. I'll ask for a second time if there's anyone in the gallery or who is with us virtually who would like to speak to this rezoning. Asking for a third time. Councillors, before I close this piece of the hearing and move to the next application, are there any questions that councillors have, either of the application? Bless you. Is there any questions you have of the applicant or of staff? Seeing none, I'll close that piece of the hearing and we will go forward to our third one, zoning amendment application number 1181, K&G Lamb, 3510 20th Avenue Northeast, R1 to R8. Director of Development Services.
This bylaw, number 4414, proposes to rezone the property addressed at 3510 20th Avenue Northeast. I won't read the whole legal description, it's very long. From R1 to R8. That's R1 single family residential to R8 residential suite zone. The property is, it fronts on 20th Ave Northeast along the northern boundary. It's a relatively large parcel of land. It's 4 hectares in area. On either side of the property are 2 residential subdivisions, mostly zoned R1, but also some R8 zones within each of those. This whole area is designated low-density residential in the official community plan, and that designation supports R8 zoning. The owner and applicant is K&G Lamb and the numbered company 1261694 BC Limited. And there's also a subdivision application that's been applied for concurrently with this rezoning. Not all of the property is proposed to go to R8. It's mostly what's shown here, the hatched portion, which is approximately 3/4 of the property. The southern portion is proposed to remain as R1, and that is where a cul-de-sac is planned within this development. There's more detailed pictures in the staff report, and I can refer to any of those pages upon request.
Great, thank you very much. And just before I invite Mr. Lamb, if you'd like to speak, just to let council know, and I know that you're in possession of these letters that have been sent in, I'll just go over them so that the gallery is aware as well. We have a letter from Bev and Jarvis Weiss. We have a letter from Ellen Underhill. We have a letter from Randy Spikesma. One from Fern Fennell and Barry Cotter. And also one from Marnie Cuthill. So I just want the gallery to know that we have accepted those letters. Council has read them and are in possession of them. We'll start with the applicant. Mr. Lamb, would you like to come forward to the mic and speak to us?
Hello, Mayor, Council.
Welcome
Trent.
to Council.
Yeah, so I'm Trent, I'm Mr. Lamb, on behalf of them. I guess we're the applicant for the numbered company. I guess first and foremost, what we're doing here is just rezoning the top portion of that property, as we mentioned, from R1 to R8.
Thank you, Trent. And can I just ask you to move real close to the
yeah.
mic, and that'll
Is that
allow
better?
the people behind you to be able to hear.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So the top portion of the property, as mentioned by Kevin, that's where we were going to rezone from R1 to R8. It is currently R1, and we're doing that, I guess, as encouraged by city staff to pre-zone that entire development area in order to meet the city's objectives and to allow all the neighbors and people building within that area to know in advance that it's all R8 versus going through all the applications on a one-by-one basis, as we propose that all those lots will be plenty large to meet the minimum requirement of an R8 lot anyways. So we wanted to make sure, and as you can see there from the proposed plan that we have available, that would be the lot, the rough lot configuration. The bottom portion we've kept as R1 based on a lot of feedback and information from the city, and the city's planning throughout the city is that R8 zoning does not work well in cul-de-sacs due to parking considerations. So we've taken that into mind and have allowed all the other lots to be large and to allow on-site parking. I think that's really about it. I'm not too sure if there's any other clarity that I need to provide at this point in time, but available for more questions if need be.
Thank you very much, Trent. I'll just see if council has any questions for you at this time. Seeing none, thank you so much. Okay, we'll ask first time if there's members of the gallery who wish to speak to this rezoning. Please, if you do, come forward to the microphone. If you just take turns, that would be great.
Your Worship, Mayor Harrison, Council. My name is Bill Cuthill. I reside at 3190 18th Avenue Northeast. And with me is Don Thompson.
3152 18th Avenue Northeast.
Thank you.
We reside in the Country Hills subdivision on 18th Avenue Northeast. We're here in reference to the proposed development located at 3510 20th Avenue Northeast. And we're in opposition to the amendment to zoning bylaw 2303 in its current form. One of the features of the Country Hills subdivision is that it is a single access community, as are the ones on 16th Avenue Northeast and 36th Street Northeast. This promotes a high degree of livability, strong community interactions, and safer streets for all ages to walk, bike, and play. Turning our streets into busy thoroughfares without sidewalks will seriously undermine that livability. We have canvassed our neighbors on 18th Avenue Northeast and the surrounding neighborhoods on 16th Avenue Northeast and 36th Street Northeast. On the whole, people with whom we've spoken are opposed to the rezoning. Most appreciate the need for quality rental accommodation in Salmon Arm, but agree that it should not be provided at the detriment of surrounding neighborhoods. Our concerns center around excessive traffic flow through now quiet neighborhoods and lack of park space for residents. We believe R1 zoning of the property is more in keeping with the character of the area, although we are not unsympathetic to the need for mortgage helper suites. We're asking council to reject the present application for 75% R8 zoning. However, if it is approved, that the R8 zone be limited to phases 3 and 4 of the subdivision and constitute no more than 40% of the total. I'll now turn it over to Don.
Thank you. And Don, did you say you were 1351, 16th?
3152 18th Avenue Northeast.
Okay, got you.
I've been there a year and a half. I still don't know my phone number or my address, but that's
Okay,
okay.
I found you.
Good, thank you. Further, although to the purpose of this hearing is to consider changes to residential zoning, we would like to speak to the matter of traffic flow through the neighborhoods surrounding the proposed development and the inclusion of a park or playground space that is part of the OCP. Of concern to the residents boarding the development and the traffic flow, as the development creates 4 new access points as per Appendix 3 of the amendment. The connecting streets to the development are without sidewalks and are and will be frequented by numerous children, families throughout the day and evening, and increased traffic puts them at risk. Of particular concern to us is the access from the proposed development through 18th Avenue Northeast, as it is sloped, which by nature increases vehicle speed. This problem is common throughout the area. Given the increased traffic that will flow from the development, we ask that the following recommendations be considered. Install traffic calming features where appropriate. Install 30 km/h speed limit signs, particularly around the green space on 18th Avenue Northeast. And institute a comprehensive traffic study for the entire area. With 16th being a thoroughfare, there will be significant traffic issues where it meets 30th Avenue. The OCP, referring to Appendix 6 of the permit application and map 11.1B of the OCP, a park or playground was proposed for the land within the development. At present, there is no local park or playground facilities available on this side of 30th Street. This delegation would like to see in fulfillment of the OCP a small park or playground adjacent to the existing green space on 18th Avenue Northeast, over and above the walking path that links the development to 30th Street Northeast. In conclusion, this delegation canvassed the surrounding community to determine if our views were supported and found our position had broad support as evidenced by signatures from 54 residents. Of 86 homes canvassed, 52% were home, 38 were unavailable. Of those 52% who answered the door, 92 opposed the R8 zoning, 4% unwilling or rejected the proposal, our proposal, and 4 abstained, being city employees. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation. If you would like to leave your signatures with the CAO, that would be most welcome. Yeah, Carl's right there.
Signature? No, I'll just leave that. Oh, thank you.
Councillors, do you have any questions for Mr. Cuthill or Thompson at this time?
Excuse me,
Oh, you're not
Worship.
finished yet. Apologies.
I just have a set of documents here. This is the information that was received from the residents that were canvassed, so they're all signed.
Thank you very much. If you would leave that with the CAO, much appreciated. Councillors, do you have any questions for either of the presenters at this time? Councillor Lindgren.
Just a curiosity, I guess. One of your main concerns seems to be about traffic flow and sort of maintaining the single access from 20th Ave, or I guess it's from different streets on each one, but if traffic if the traffic flow was maintained like it is it the number of homes in the area that you're objecting to, or just the traffic flow because there'd be multiple accesses?
Well, the density that is being proposed will inevitably lead to much higher traffic flows. It has been indicated that there's 3 parking spaces allocated for each R8 zone property. And it's been my experience that in addition to parking for your renter, very often there's 2 people that are parking. Most families these days have up to 2 cars per family, in addition to which they often have boats that have to be parked and RVs that have to be parked. So, you know, the number of vehicles flowing in and out of that proposed subdivision each and every day could be quite substantial. And the impact that it's going to have, particularly on 16th, but also on 18th, could very easily jeopardize the nature of our communities. Right now, they're very quiet, suburban, family-orientated subdivisions.
Bill, may I interject when you get it?
And you may interject on.
Thank you, Bill. In canvassing the residents of 16th Avenue, that was a concern for them, particularly where it empties out onto 30th. They were very concerned, given too there's a crosswalk there, access to a high school. So, and just that whole general volume of traffic emptying out at that point. Because really, limited traffic will come down 18th Avenue to access to the city. That's just a roundabout way. But that was something that was shared with us by those people canvassed.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I call a second time, I understand that zoning and traffic are related. We all understand that here. Just a clarification from the Director of Development Services. If the rezoning is rejected and the property remains R1, would the traffic plans for 16th and 18th be any different?
Your Worship, with the present R1 zoning, the subdivision, which is the concept for that, which is shown in Appendix 3, could be approved pretty much, subject to meeting all the servicing requirements and development cost charges. And we do not, as staff and through our engineering department, feel that this subdivision warrants a traffic study. It's low density. We have approved many other subdivisions of this size and scale without traffic studies. And I mean, it's bounded by a collector avenue to the north, an arterial along 30th. The connectivity has been in the plans for decades. It's based on the subdivision of this here along 16th Avenue back in 1967. And then on this subdivision on the eastern side, that was approved in 1972. And the pre-plan for this area was developed sometime in the 80s, I believe. I don't have the exact date, but it makes sense to staff. It just aligns with many other low-density subdivisions we have in the city.
Thank you for that. And so just so the gallery is aware that council does not, what council's looking at today is the rezoning, and I do understand it's related to traffic, and so I'll certainly allow presenters to talk about that, but the actual laying out of the streets is done by staff. That is not determined by city council. Councillor Flynn, did you wish to ask a question?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is to our Director of Development Services. A couple applicants have already spoke to higher densities, and we know that a legal suite or a non-conforming suite is intended for somebody to live in it, but R1 and R8 are both considered low density, correct?
Director of Development Services?
Yes, that's correct.
And it's not a different density.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Lindgren, did you have a question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm just looking at it's Appendix 4, and I mean, it seems pretty clear that there was some forethought given to the street layout of the other subdivisions surrounding this one, and it's pretty clear from the way it's laid out that connectivity was planned. Is there a benefit to the community to have this layout that's being, or that, you know, the one that exists already and would be connected by this new plan? Is there a benefit as far as traffic flow or escape routes for fires or those kinds of things? What's the sort of long-term plan when this is set up?
Okay, I'll take that question for the Director of Development Services, and then we'll move forward with our public hearing and allow questions for staff at the end. Go ahead, Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, it's an excellent question related to the previous. Our servicing bylaw requires that a secondary access, road access, egress be provided after a road gets to a certain length, and that length is 160 meters. So this subdivision here on the right-hand side, approved in 1972, contemplated the secondary access out along 16th through this property and out to 30th as a second way out for either emergency purposes or practical purposes.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. I'll ask a second time if there's people in the gallery who would like to come forward and speak, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Randy Speaksma. I live at 1820 36th Street, so the old Harper Road subdivision.
Welcome to council.
Thank you. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm challenged by fitting my discussion into the specific focus of the hearing, that being the increased density that's being proposed with the R8, but I will speak to that first maybe, and then speak to some concerns regarding traffic that have been brought forward
That would be fine, thank you.
Thanks. So I am in support of the rezoning that is being proposed. I think that increasing density as much as possible within the city limits in an area that isn't on agricultural land, for example, is a good idea. That being said, I think the requirements for parking and how well that can be enforced was sort of alluded to earlier in the conversation, and that's a concern I would raise. And then the other issue is these kind of developments are great, I feel, as long as they respect the existing neighborhoods. And so I've seen some infill developments such as this where the setbacks don't really respect the existing developments that exist. And so that would be a concern I have for all the adjacent neighborhoods and how the development would move ahead, specifically regarding setbacks from those properties on all sides. Regarding the increased density and the concern around access, I'm on 36th, which would be, given the proposed design, which would be connected through to 16th as well. And we would expect to see significant non-neighborhood through traffic. And so that's one thing, in part because of the connection to 30th and with the high school across the road there as well, that we'd expect to see pretty significant traffic that the streets are not set up for. Related to this, and another point that was raised earlier, is also through streets versus no through streets. I think, again, the city should consider, despite maybe some operational or emergency purposes, should consider no through streets as an asset when it comes to livability of the neighborhoods and sort of the long-term feeling of these neighborhoods. I think there's a great opportunity for this piece of property to, although it may go against a length of road policies that are in place, there would be a great opportunity to actually maintain all of the no-through road status while still developing the property at the same level. And so I think that's just a decision that could be made respecting the benefit of these no-through street environments. The last concern I wanted to raise was mostly regarding greenways. A lot of effort went into the greenway strategy, and although the recommendations in there in the strategy allow for development-related changes, I think there's more that the community can do in this property to consider the long-term livability of the community. I think the allotment of the east-west trail that's heavily used, that's an excellent first step. The other key linkage from a greenways point of view is north from there, and half of that is in place. With the proposed road that goes along the west side of the property, there's a proposed trail that goes about halfway up. We're losing the ability to make a connection north from there, which would be, I would consider, a key connection for this part of the city. And so that I would recommend that being reevaluated, although I understand that that's not necessarily within the purview of council. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions for Mr. Spikesma at this time? Okay, thank you very much. We can call you back if we have questions. Asking again for presenters. Yes, please come forward, Doug.
Here, we'll make this noise. There you go.
You're the star, Barb.
Hi, Doug Pierce, 3380 20th Avenue Northeast. Just no problems with the subdivision, really. There is a little bit of an issue with the R8 because of whether it's R1 or 8. We're looking at approximately 100 new vehicles entering onto 20th Avenue, depending, of course, the time of day. From just the subdivision alone, that's going with 34 or 36 lots, and if there are 8, there could be up to 100 vehicles around. The other issue was already spoken on as far as green space and walkways. Really, there's very little in the area, although it's shown that there is a designated park on 18th, but it's more of a ski hill than a park. It's not really usable. There is district-owned property, and I believe the Trail Alliance has something to do with it, which is nice. It's well used, but the access of the subdivision going out on 20th does pose a problem with traffic, a huge problem. There's already whether it's from 40th or 30th, a lot of traffic and a lot of speed for the traffic on 20th. And with another 100 vehicles coming out onto 20th, regardless which road they come out at, the District of Salmon Arm will have to consider putting some four-way stops either at 20th and 30th or 40th and 20th, or at the exit of this new subdivision proposal, which would be 36th. Just because of the traffic and the speed. District of Salmon Arm has 5 signs already designating it at 50K, but the signs really aren't for the local people, and the local residents in that neighborhood aren't generally the ones that are speeding, and it's the through traffic. And at some point, with this extra traffic coming on to 20th Avenue, from whichever of the 3 or 4 entrances to 20th, at some point they're going to have to address four-way stops, and unfortunately there's a bit of a crown of the road there, and that does present a problem, but they also have another problem at 30th and 20th. So just asking the traffic study again to be done, because it is going to increase the problem that's already there with speeders, and a little bit worse if they do the R8 zoning. Anyhow, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And you live right at the corner of the subdivision and 20th, don't you? So
That's
you have
correct.
experience with pulling out on the crest of that
Yes, right
hill.
where the two barriers are, which will probably come out of there, and I only presume that the sidewalk will continue there. But it is a fairly major trail down the one side that will be lost to a lot of dog walkers and a lot of foot traffic there. They will have the access onto the road, but there's no sidewalks there, and that will present again a problem with let's say green space, and no sidewalks on coming out to the 20th from the proposed subdivision.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your experience of living in that spot. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Yes, please come forward. Thanks, Barb.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Bev Weiss. I live at 1781 36th Street, Northeast.
Welcome to Council.
Thank you. Many things have been said and many very good thoughts about the new development. And my support would be to have a traffic study. On 36th Street, when you approach 20th Avenue, there is a rise, and that rise is dangerous in the winter, especially because the cars are coming down, and oftentimes the roads are so slippery that you can't make a left-hand turn. And if the speed limit isn't reduced or some calming areas introduced, there's going to be many accidents, I guaranteed, with the high density of and number of vehicles that will be using that road. So I would just like to give support to what's already been said about doing a major traffic study in that area. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I'll just see, Bev, if there's any questions for you. Could I just ask you, Bev, when you come out of your place on 36th Street Northeast and you want to go downtown, do you go right or left on 20th?
We go left.
Okay. All right.
So because it's so sharp a rise, and because a lot of people and trucks and transport trucks use 20th, instead of going downtown and through the lights, through the city, they actually use 20th to commute downtown. So the number of vehicles that use that road just as a parallel road to the Trans-Canada, and the number of people that are speeding along that road is unbelievable.
So can I ask you one more question about driving?
Sure.
This might not be a popular question with everybody in the gallery, but if the throughfare goes through 16th to 30th, will you go down from your house and along 16th and come out at 30th?
See, that's definitely a possibility, and yet at the same time, I think that living where we are, I would like to respect the people who live along 16th so that the traffic isn't increased that way. in front of their places. So I would tend to probably stay with 36th Street as opposed to going down 16th, because I think we have to distribute the traffic in order to make this whole system work, because if we have a lot of people going on just one street, I think that's not exactly fair to all the neighborhoods, because to me there's three neighborhoods. There's the neighborhood on the right, and then really two on the left, the Country Hills, and then the subdivision along the back trail. So I think that a traffic study is important to do.
Great, thank you very much.
And I just wanted to mention one more thing in terms of supporting another consultation about the green space, because the green space that already exists right now, and I had attended a workshop and then looked for the green space, and what it is a clump of trees, which is lovely, but it's not walkable. It has no room for a playground whatsoever, and an all-age playground in a green space, I think, is desirable for the number of people that will be in those subdivisions, especially when potentially there could be, as one of the proposals said, between 60 and 84 households in that new development. So having a consultation with Greenways or whomever would be, to me, very vital.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Other speakers, please come forward if you wish to speak. And ma'am, you in purple are on deck and you're in the hole.
Good evening, Mayor, your council. I'm Ken Thiessen. I'm at 3710 16th Northeast. Glad to know that our subdivision now has a name. It's the Eastern Subdivision. And my concern is not so much for the development itself, but the traffic, as was gone over in detail with Doug Pierce. The traffic and the road situation on 20th, fronting the new subdivision and up to 36th Street is a problem. It's a crested hill. It shows no low visibility sign, which is partly obstructed by some branches. And I have a habit of continually always looking a second time yet before making a left turn to town. Highly encourage traffic study in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Please come forward, ma'am.
Hello, Council. I'm Cheryl Young at 3390 16th Ave Northeast.
Welcome to Council.
Thank you. I actually didn't really have anything prepared, but I just wrote a few things. I'm not really opposed to development. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. We do need rentals. The density of the traffic flow on 16th Ave, where it exits across the high school. In the mornings and the afternoon, exiting out of there with high school students. There is who's going to go next. That seems to be a problem. You're talking 16, 18-year-olds. So that's just an issue. Just wondering what is going to happen with 16th Ave. Right now, it is only a lane and a half wide. There was a rental house that was, or a house that was built just a few doors down a few years ago. I opposed that because of it being a rental. In the winter, for parking, people are parked out on the road. Plow trucks cannot go down the road. Our garbage truck cannot go down the road because people are parked out on the road. Is there going to be curbs going to be put on 16th Ave? Are they going to widen the road? Don't know. 18th Ave, just last year, had just been paved. They have curbs. So I'm just wondering what the proposal is for 16th Ave, because it is so narrow to begin with, and we're going to have increased traffic flow.
Great, thank you, Carol. We'll be sure to ask that question to staff before we close the hearing.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have any other things that you'd like to add?
Let me just... No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, honorable members. I am Cheryl Lamberg, no relation. I live at 3361 16th. Not only is 16th Avenue very narrow, when it snows it is almost impassable, plus our mailbox is at the apex of the street. One thing that's not been determined around here is the terrain and the landscape of where we're talking about. It's fairly steep at the bottom of 16th on the west side of where the green space panhandle is meeting. That area could be an issue for possible drainage. I also happen to live on the back side of the green space, which it's a pond. So I can't see any future possibility of a park unless there's a lot of infill, a lot of understructure happening in that area. Are they going to keep some of the trees that we already have? Because if they rip the trees down, it's going to look like a new subdivision instead of keeping in the line with the rest of the subdivisions. I think that there may be too many lots planned for the area. I do completely believe that we need subdivisions, we need new housing, but I don't think we need quite so many in such a small area. The parking is going to be a huge issue. I don't know how council can keep it down to one vehicle per rental. That just doesn't seem possible. I believe everybody comes to the shoe shop with the same possibility that I have. I want to park my toys in my backyard. If there's a way that we can keep these as suites and not as secondary dwellings, I think that might be a much greener space and a much more environmentally friendly way to do it. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions for Ms. Lambert? Okay, thank you, appreciate your input. Other people who wish to speak, please feel welcome to come forward. I'll ask for a second time. If there's members of the gallery or if there's people who are on virtually who wish to speak. I'll ask for a third time. I will ask one more time, but I will let council have an opportunity to ask questions of any of the presenters or of staff. And council, you can ask questions of staff after the hearing closes, but you're welcome to ask now as well. So I'll open it up to council before I ask for a final time. Councilors, do you have any questions of any presenter? Or staff is fine. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. I just wanted to see if staff could address the concern about 16th being narrow. I don't know for sure that these maps that we have are to scale, but it looks on these maps like all the streets are about the same width and size, and I'm just wondering, is 16th actually narrower than other streets in the area?
Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Your Worship, 16th has the designated right-of-way width, but the asphalt width is slightly narrower than most of the roads. It does have ditches on one side, and then it slopes off to the south for most of the properties.
And at this time, the city wouldn't have any plans to widen the pavement?
Not at this time. That would be something that would either be done by development, but most of these lots are built out, so that would be a local improvement.
Which means it would be fairly low down the priority list at this point.
That would be up to council.
Right, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. Councillor Cannon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question to staff in regards to the rezoning, the R8, and then about 25% of the property will stay R1. In this development, if this passes, would people, the public, be able to come to council to try to get the R1 rezoned to R8? Or would there be some kind of covenant on the property that the lots in the cul-de-sac could not be looked at getting rezoned to R8?
Thank you, Councillor Cannon. Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, there is no restrictive covenant being contemplated right now for this southern portion. So if the rezoning goes through, that the northern 3/4 is rezoned to R8 and this southern portion remains R1, a future property owner could come to council with an application because the OCP supports R8, but a covenant could restrict that too if council wishes to ask for a covenant.
Okay, and then I had another question. I know that we recently have done kind of a blanketed rezoning of R8 in a different development. Would you, like, if it's zoned R8, not necessarily will someone that buys that property put a suite into it? Would that be a correct assumption?
Director of Development Services.
The two other examples I can think of a property of this size and scale are one of the new subdivisions around Hillcrest School, where there was a blanket rezoning to R8. And I don't know for sure how many of those properties have suites or not, because once they have R8, I don't really keep track of all the building permits and which ones have suites, but the fact that they have R8 zoning, they're allowed to have a suite.
Yeah, and then at building permit time is when it's made sure that it's legal.
That's right, and there's restrictions on the size of suites. They can only be a maximum of 90 square meters in floor area, and that's for any type of suite, whether it's a suite in the house or in a detached suite. And there's special setbacks in the R8 zone for detached suites that are a bit more restrictive than accessory buildings in the R1 zone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Yeah, just a quick question in keeping with that line. I've got a number of questions for staff, but I think I'll wait till after it closes. But this one is somewhat related. The lot sizes in this subdivision, are they all eligible for detached, or are many of them the proposed lot sizes because they're not designed yet? Or are most of them going to have to be in the main building?
Director of Development Services.
Most of the lots on this concept, which is the latest one we're reviewing, are large enough for a detached suite.
Okay. And related to one of the people that, not applicants, one of the presenters, a detached suite would still have fairly significant setbacks from the backyard line, because that was one of the concerns of one of the applicants is setbacks, and obviously we have very significant setback rules, and it's interesting that we've got very large lots in this subdivision, yet some very small ones really packed right next door to it. So
thank you, Director of Development Services. It'd be interesting to hear the setback differences between the R8 detached suite and accessory building in an R1.
Yes.
Okay, Your Worship, so this is a northern portion, just for an example. These properties range in size from 1,000 square meters to 700 and 78 square meters, these 4 lots here. This one's 860 square meters, this one's 858 square meters. The minimum parcel size is 700 square meters for a detached suite. The minimum width of a property has to be 20 meters wide. This one is 20 meters wide. This one is, I need new glasses, I'm sorry. These are all approximately 20 meters wide. They have to be at least 20 meters wide. So the setback for a detached suite, there's a little bit of freedom here because the setback for any building, say on lot 31, is 6 meters from the road, whether it's the house or a detached suite. Most people are putting their detached suites in the backyard, in which case there's a 3-meter setback from the rear yard line and a 2-meter setback from the side yards. So there's a fairly liberal envelope available for a detached suite. However, the footprint of the detached suite cannot exceed the size of the single-family dwelling. It has to be, it's an accessory building in some respects. It cannot be as high as a single-family dwelling. It can be 7.5 meters maximum in height, which is 75% of the height of a single-family dwelling. And it cannot exceed, like the footprint of it cannot exceed that of the house. So it's meant to be a smaller scale house, and the maximum floor space, again, 90 square meters.
And related to the mayor's question that added to my question, if somebody bought the lot and decided to just do a regular home and a outbuilding, garage, and put the garage in the back, the setbacks are the same whether it's a garage or a suite on the garage?
If somebody on lot 31 as an example, built their house more or less in the middle of the property and put an accessory building, a shed in the back, yep, they could locate the shed 1 meter from the rear property line.
So sheds can be closer than...
And 1 meter to the interior, okay, and 1 meter to this interior. So closer to the property lines for a shed.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Lindgren?
Thanks.
Just press your button. Thank you.
Got it. I'm just looking at the Appendix 2, which is a photograph of the neighborhood. And it seems like the new proposed lots are smaller than the existing lots on either of the neighboring existing neighborhoods. And if I look at the pictures of the house on the lot with the amount of green space around it and the driveway and how close they are to the neighboring houses, I have a hard time envisioning how they could possibly get a detached suite on those existing lots, like the ones along 18th Ave, or 16th is a little bit bigger, but along 18th Ave, 19th Ave, they look like they're packed in very tight, but, I mean, relatively speaking. However, those lots are bigger than the ones that are proposed on the new subdivision, so I'm just wondering how, I don't know, why is that? It doesn't seem possible to me.
Director of Development Services, these lots actually, to me, look about the same size, but I could be incorrect. I think the question is, are the lots bigger or smaller in this subdivision than, say, in Country Hills?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact lot sizes of what's in Country Hills. They could be larger. They actually look a bit shallower in depth. And the houses might be larger than what could be built on a potential new lot in this subdivision with a detached suite. Okay. Because there is a maximum parcel coverage that has to be adhered to.
Right, okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions for any speakers or staff at this time? As I say, you'll be able to ask questions of staff after the hearing closes. Okay, we'll ask again if there's other speakers who wish to come forward to speak to this rezoning. Last chance. Seeing none, I'll declare this hearing closed. And we will now go to reconsideration of bylaws. We'll do them in the same order that we worked through for the public hearing. So we're looking at City of Salmon Arm zoning amendment bylaw number 4407. Brent Neufeld, 1831 22nd Street Northeast, R1 to R8. We have a proposed motion. If I could have a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Flynn, Councillor Cannon, thank you. Any comments or questions before I call the question on this motion? Councillor Lavery.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I fully support this application at hand. Could we just have a quick look at page 152, which is the zoning map? Yeah, thank you. It's that one there, Your Worship. I'm being a little disingenuous here. I just wanted to point out the spread of R8s within this neighborhood. And I'm using this solely as a reference to the subsequent applications. But R8s are occurring through all communities, through all neighborhoods throughout the city. And I do fully support this R8 application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I guess in continuing with Councillor Lavery's comments, we are seeing full subdivisions of R8s being approved. We are seeing pretty much every R8 that comes to us approved, and it's interesting, of the first two where there was nobody speaking against, one is detached and one is attached. I fully support this application. It makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Any other speakers? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? And for those in the gallery, you can see councillors who are virtual use the chat line. I see all three councillors are in favor, so that bylaw passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move to 24.2, City of Salmon Arm zoning amendment bylaw number 4412, R. Weems, 2830 25th Street Northeast. Third reading. We have a proposed motion. If we could have a couple of the virtual councillors, if they wish to move and second this. Councillor Wallace Richmond moves, or Councillor Eliason moves, Councillor Wallace Richmond seconds. Thank you. Discussion on this motion. Councillor Lavery.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. I will support this application as well. Could we have the zoning map, I believe it's on page 165 of our agenda, put on the screen, please? Thank you very much. That's the one. Again, I would note that R8 applications are occurring in all neighborhoods in the city, including this one. It's an example of an R8 next to other R8s, and to the right side towards the bottom is a zoned R8, blanket zoned R8, so that all new applicants or purchasers, when that's developed, will be aware of that R8 zoning. I fully support this application at hand. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace Richmond.
Thanks, Your Worship. I also want to point out that the applicant is making good on their efforts to bring the suite into compliance. It's important to remember that there are many homes that have suites that are not illegal and do not comply and aren't necessarily the safest way to do things. So I always appreciate when owners take that step to meet code and apply for the proper zoning.
Councillor Wallace Richmond. Any other speakers to this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go to 24.3, City of Salmon Arm zoning amendment bylaw number 4414, K&G Lamb, 3510 20th Avenue Northeast. R1 to R8. We have a proposed motion. Moved by Councillor Eliason, seconded by Councillor Cannon. Thank you. Discussion by council. Or questions of staff if you have them. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship. I do have some questions for staff. And I guess just clarification, we are dealing just with a rezoning, R1 to R8 on basically 75% of the property, leaving some of it at R1.
That's correct.
My question or clarification is, council is not involved in the subdivision approval. Most of the comments I've heard are related to roads, parks, trails that will be part of the subdivision approval. It sounds like the only thing council could possibly change here is to put a restrictive covenant around the cul-de-sac for the R1 to make sure a future council doesn't approve an R8 on the cul-de-sac, perhaps. If there's a covenant, then anybody that buys in that R1 part could not apply. Is that correct? Councillor Cannon asked the question, and I just need clarification.
Director of Development Services.
Your Worship, there was a few questions in there, so I'll start with the first one.
Are you surprised after how long I've been here, Kevin?
So council did have some say on the park dedication. There was a resolution provided when council granted first and second reading. There was also a resolution to support the proposed park dedication, which includes the turning the Panhandle access out to 30th Street and dedicating that as a public pedestrian trail, because as at present people are trespassing over that. It's private property. And also the dedication to park includes a strip of land along the western boundary of the subject property, about 1/3 of the way up, to connect to this Country Hills neighborhood park, which we know has not been improved or developed as a park. There's a reason for that. Neighborhood parks in this state are quite common in Salmon Arm, but there's reasons why staff and I believe council chose this idea for a dedicated trail, and the reasons are provided in the staff report. Secondly, for a covenant, if council asked for a covenant, you can, as a condition for final reading. And in that scenario, if this subdivision is approved, all of these lots down here in the south would have a covenant saying no secondary suite or detached suite is permitted. And then anybody who buys those properties should obtain the title, and they'd see that there's a covenant saying no suites.
Okay. So staff discussed with the developer, I'm assuming that it came to us, because this is kind of the first one I think I've seen with 75% R8 recommendation, 25% R1. Staff doesn't feel we should put a restrictive covenant or ask for that?
Director of Development Services.
Yeah, that's a difficult one for me to answer because the OCP supports R8 zoning. So, I mean, if somebody came along and applied for R8 and they wanted to have a suite within the house, the neighborhood, the surrounding neighbors might be okay with it. Council might be okay with it. We may not get an application like that for a year or 5 years or 7 years. So if council asked for a covenant, I would understand the reason for it. I would actually suggest that the applicant raise their hand if they're in favor of it too, because asking for a covenant works best when the applicant agrees to that.
All right, the public hearing's closed now, so I can't ask that question. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, so that's in council's hands if one of us wanted to move that and one of us wanted to second it and have a discussion around that.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm just checking some of my other questions. I think this was answered earlier, but just to clarify, and this would be to the Director of Engineering and Public Works, there's no, you don't foresee between you and Director of Development Services asking for any off-site improvements from the developer Because I know we can ask for off-site, but we don't foresee doing anything to 16th, or this developer doing anything to 16th.
Director of Engineering and Public Works.
Your worship, they are responsible for off-site improvements, but not on 16th.
Okay.
Leading up to the subdivision. So the subdivision itself will have sidewalks within the subdivision, and they will improve the frontages along 20th Ave.
So when you call those off-site, and I kind of call those on-site because it's in the subdivision. So what you mean by off-site is not on the specific individual lots. They will have to do it inside the development. There will be sidewalks.
That's correct. Inside the subdivision, there will be sidewalks, and along 20th, on the north side of the subdivision, they will have to improve that frontage as well.
Okay.
So you'll be getting connectivity through the roads and through the sidewalks up to the streets that are adjoining.
And that would explain, because there was a presenter who asked why isn't the proposed trail continuing up, it's because you're going to connect to a road that's going to have a sidewalk, and that'll connect to another sidewalk to get you. Okay, thank you. I just wanted clarification on that. So you and I call off-sites different. That's fine. I think that was most of my questions. I'll wait for other questions and then comments later.
Okay. Any other questions by council before we go to comments? I think Councillor Wallace-Richmond is ready to comment, but I'll keep it at questions for the time being. Councillor Lindgren.
Just a question about the trail. We talked about the panhandle access becoming a trail and a trail going up to the park. Is there any access beyond that point up to 20th Avenue, or would that be strictly by the proposed streets then? If question.
Yeah, Your Worship, I can answer that.
Thank you.
So the standard of today requires a sidewalk to be constructed on one side of the street. If you look at the Country Hills subdivision directly to the west, I don't believe there's any sidewalks in there.
I don't think
And
so.
that was subdivided mostly in the 90s. So the standards have changed. They've elevated since then. We require a sidewalk at least on one side of a street. But that does not mean the developer has to construct a sidewalk off of the property, as was discussed earlier. So the streets will be definitely at a higher standard within this subdivision for pedestrian and vehicles.
So presumably somebody riding their bicycle along 30th could then access the Panhandle Trail up to the park area and then access sidewalks from there inside the subdivision. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move to comments then, and we'll start with Councillor Wallace-Richmond.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I appreciate your commitment and your passion for your neighborhood. I sense your nervousness and anxiety, and I want you to know that if your neighborhood is not going to change overnight, but it is going to change. And so what we do know for sure is that you have concerns about traffic on 20th and you have concerns about traffic on 30th. But that does not change the fact this piece of property is already zoned R1 and can be subdivided. So even doing nothing means there could still be 35, 36 homes in this neighborhood. Now, I know that R8 concerns you, but I think R8 is really good for everybody. It's good for R1 zoned property. It's good for densification of services. It's practical. It makes things more affordable, but mostly it makes things legal. So sometimes the problems we worry about with R8, such as traffic and people parked on the street and so on and so forth, can sometimes be caused by non-compliant suites where there isn't proper parking and it isn't an appropriate suite and it might not even meet bylaw or code. I think R8 is a practical, safe, wise way to develop a new property, and I wish the developer well, and I hope they keep in touch with the neighborhood so that you know what's going on. It is a very part of town in which to live, walkable on the bus route, near the schools, near the grocery store, et cetera, et cetera. So I will be voting in support of this, but I do want to acknowledge the anxiety and encourage you to remember it's not going to happen. But whether it's R1 or R8, it is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace-Richmond. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Worship, and thanks to all those who've come out and given us their thoughts. And there's good design ideas there. I just want to frame my comments in two ways. And the first one is that many, if not most of us, get out and look at properties and walk them and look at the connectivity. It's not that we're doing this as an exercise on paper. I walk through this neighborhood on 16th, 18th, 20th, the pathway, ride my bike, and I'm just using it as an example as we are familiar with the concerns as well as the potential of the proposal. I'd also, and I'm going to frame my comments here as being a chair, and I would argue an active chair of the Greenways Liaison as well. And Your Worship, I'm going to take a minute or two here, but before we start, could I have again the zoning map on page 179 on the screen? Thank you very much. I just want to, in terms of some of the comments that have been made, the input that's been made, I don't want to counteract them, but I want to provide a differing view for it. One of the comments was about sidewalks and to go all the way to 36th. This council, previous councils have ensured exactly what staff are talking about, that a proponent is responsible for that outside infrastructure as you go along. And this proposal, it will not go all the way to 36, but it will do the 20th footprint of getting up to standard sidewalks in there. I wish 16th, I wish 20th to the east of the proposal that in place at the time, that perhaps other councils had suggested that. But we're in the middle of dealing with what I would frame not enough duty for connectivity in the past. And this proposal, in my view, does provide that. We've had comments about playground, and there's not an active playground here. Reference to the existing playground on the properties to the west. I think it's been underemphasized, the importance of the dog leg from 30th, from Broadview to this proposal. It is, the OCP doesn't say you have an active playground. I would love to have one. It says you need a green space and a public green space area. And I can't think of a more valuable access of connectivity that is now under this proposal dedicated to the city. And it outweighs some of the other criticisms, in my view, of active playgrounds. There has been some reference to, and I appreciate it, but have a trail north of 18th to 20th. There is connectivity to the streets, but when I look up there, it looks like that would require expropriating private property or a combination. I don't see that as feasible. And finally, there's been, Your Worship, a number of comments about increase the setbacks, decrease the percent that you can use for R8. And there are rights of property owners involved here. And those rights of property owners are to have equal access to the same set of standards that are applicable to any other property or person who wants to develop their property. And so, while I appreciate there's that sense of intrusion into an existing neighborhood, there are rights of property owners here too. And I think that what has been proposed here is, in my view, very sensitive to what could be permitted and to help make it work in terms of connectivity. I accept the rationale of staff about not needing a traffic study. And while this may not be popular, I think it's a red herring. I think that there are traffic issues on 20th and sight lines and things like that, without a doubt. But it in my view, does not warrant a traffic study. And the proximity of this neighborhood, this potential neighborhood coming up for schools to communities, is huge. And I'll repeat a little bit of what Councillor Wallace-Richmond said. It's a smart growth that densifies housing options rather than sprawl. It will have on-site parking. It'll have legalized, up-to-code building suites. And I know there's been some references to rentals. And some folks said, well, we need more rentals. Bit of pejorative language, in my view, about rentals as well that I've heard in the presentations. That these are mortgage homes for young families coming in. And I've requested this here. All neighborhoods are going through R8 to have a block zoning of R8, and for potential folks coming in, knowing the circumstance is absolutely huge. Finally, Your Worship, I'll wrap up, and I'm fully supporting the motion in front of us here. The connectivity is there. The the Greenway strategy is a conceptual plan to make sure there's connectivity going through properties. The Greenways liaison strategy got it right. And in my view, this proposal achieves the general outcome that were implicit with that Greenway strategy. So I want to thank folks for that. I defer to my well-spoken colleague, Councillor Wallace-Richmond, about there is change and change coming. This is a development proposal to be celebrated in I will fully support.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Councillor Flynn.
Now I know why I quite often go first, because everybody else takes up all the things I was going to say. But it's interesting, I'd made quite a few notes and had quite a few questions, but the first thing I'd written down is the one thing constant in life is change, and change sometimes isn't easy. But I'm glad that Councillor Lavery brought up the map that's in front of us, because when you look at that, and whether you bought in that subdivision that was built in 72 or the one that was built, I think, before that, and you see that big empty piece that has never been developed, just looking at that graph pictorially, it makes sense that that's going to be a subdivision. We just talked today, we're in our end of our second year, halfway through the term. It's my 5th term, and I think in all that time, we've probably, I don't know how many R1 to R8s we've dealt with, but I don't know that we've turned down more than one out of probably a couple hundred. I've been a strong proponent of blanket R8s like this, and in fact, I would have supported even the cul-de-sac being R8, but I think this is a good compromise. We've been focusing on connectivity. This has connectivity, and every time we do an R1 to R8, actually tonight we didn't have it on the 2 individual ones, but most times we do an R1 to R8, we hear traffic, and it's always a legitimate concern, and we hear parking. And honestly, my experience is legal, properly designated safe R8s have fewer parking problems and other issues around them than non-conforming or illegal suites. We as a community need housing. Young families need mortgage helpers. I think staff and the developer have done a great job working on a very exciting addition to our community. And as I said, we hear traffic all the time. I don't think a traffic study, the problems on 20th and 30th are problems that our community has. People speeding are problems our community has, and this development will add a few new homes, 34 or thereabouts, and maybe 40 to 45 households, but I'm very much in support. And I do want to say a blanket R8 does not mean that everybody that builds in there will build a suite. It might be 25%. We haven't done blanket R8s enough to know what ends up being developed, and I never thought of it till the question was asked of the Director of Development Services. When we approve R8, we don't know how many of them have suites because you don't have to apply. But I would suggest even at the highest end, it'll be 50%, not the 75. And if it is 75, that's actually better for the community. I fully support this. I do not support a traffic study, and I feel that this is a very good addition to our community, and think the connectivity, as Councillor Lavery spoke to, is a great addition to our trail network. So I will vote in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Cannon.
Thank you, Your Worship. When I look at this development and the rezoning that's before us, I think it looks like a really exciting development. And like Councillor Flynn said, you look at the appendix, I think it's appendix 5, that's in front of us right now that has this big space, and it was inevitable that that's going to be a development, that property, because it was zoned R1. And I think R8 is really kind of the wave of the future of rezoning, because then you have the ability to have mortgage helpers for young families and also rental available, because we're always needing rentals in our community. And I really like the idea of the connectivity of the greenways. I think that's really exciting to have that connection, and the walkways. I think it'll really be a good flow to all of the subdivisions connecting. And I also, when I look at the roads and the way that they'll connect, they'll be, I think our mayor asked one of the presenters, you know, which way will you go out when you leave? I think when these roads are developed, there's going to be options of how you can leave your residence to either go to 30th or 20th. So I think there'll be options there. And, you know, I asked the question, if it's all zoned R8, how many of those will actually develop suites? And I would probably say maybe 50%, like Councillor Flynn, but I guess the future will tell us that. So I totally support this development. And change is always hard for neighbors that live around this vacant piece of property, but change is always coming.
Thank you, Councillor Cannon. Councillor Lindgren.
Thanks. Thanks everybody for coming and talking to us about how you feel about this. As a fairly emotional person and the least experienced counselor, I often feel the pressure from a group like you guys that come and have an emotional response, and I feel that anxiety that you bring with you, and so it's good for me to sit back and hear the other responses from other counselors who are more experienced and sort of get my emotions in check a bit and try and give a more logical response. And so the one thing that you guys are talking about with traffic is that you're worried that there's going to be a whole bunch of people come into your neighborhood that don't live there. And when I look at the layout of the surrounding roads, and I don't see this as a shortcut to anywhere. So for me, that doesn't seem like a logical that, you know, all the kids coming out of the high school are going to take a shortcut through your neighborhood to where? Like, where would they be going? It seems to me that this is still a neighborhood where people who live there will be driving through it, but people who don't live there will have no reason to go in. And the best defense for speeding is really to have narrow streets with a lot of kids playing in them. In Europe, the way that they control traffic, to have traffic calming, is to make sure that the streets are not too wide, that they don't have a lot of people don't feel that it's safe to go that fast. And you'll notice the speed on Alexander Street, for instance, is extremely slow because there are people on the street, there are cars close by, it's single lane. People know that that is a good traffic calming measure. And so when people are thinking about a shortcut from 30th Street, coming up 16th, which you're telling me is narrow and congested and hard to get around, isn't a fast way to get somewhere. So that deters people from coming into your neighborhood. So, I mean, if I were living on 16th Street, and I love that street, some have often wished that I had a house there, I would be working hard to make sure it didn't get widened and curbed and sidewalked, because it's probably your best defense to keep through traffic from just zipping through. We're lucky in Canada in that we've grown up in a country where we have a ton of space and a very small population. And if you travel, I'm sure many of you have traveled in other countries, anywhere in the world outside of North America, you know that nobody in the world has this kind of luxury like we have. And so we've had a long history of having large lots and lots of space between neighbors, and that's changing because it's not affordable anymore. And what you want, I think, in your neighborhood is more neighbors like you, which is to say people who care about their neighborhood, people who have kids riding their bikes up and down the street, hockey games in the middle of the road, calling car, and getting their net to the side so a car can go by. I grew up like that, and I can tell by the way you talk about your neighborhood that that's what you're looking for. And the best way to ensure that you get that is to allow young families to move in. And the only way that they can do that is to have somebody help them pay their mortgage or move into somebody's basement suite. And so I know that it's very difficult and anxiety provoking to have change in your neighborhood. It's the biggest investment any of us has ever made in our life, and we worry about losing our enjoyment of that. But I think it's important for us to remember that everybody has a right to that. Everybody deserves to have a home, and sometimes we have to move over a little bit and make a bit of space for people who aren't as lucky as we are. So I'm going to vote in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Lindgren. Councillor Eliason.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I truly will not repeat what other people have said, even though people have said they're not going to repeat what other people have said, and then they've said exactly what the other people have said. No offense to my colleagues. This is the direction we've asked staff to go. This is the direction we've asked developers to go. We've asked for connectivity. We've asked for mixed zoning, including R8, even if it is on larger lots, to get density, to promote neighborhoods, connected neighborhoods with attainable, affordable houses. And even though the suites don't help a lot, they really do help build our community. So I'll vote in favor of this, knowing that many of the people on council right now supported me when I asked staff to come up with the zoning, which Kevin Pearson did, which allowed for suites and detached residential suites. And so for that reason, it's the right thing to do, and I'll let the mayor finish it and make it feel better than my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Eliason. Appreciate it. Could we just have Appendix 1 put up on the screen? Yeah, that's the one. First of all, thank you. Thank you for coming and talking to us about your neighborhood. No one knows your neighborhood better than you do. As Councillor Lavery said, some of us have spent time there walking through and biking, but you live there, so you know it best. And I certainly learned some things about your neighborhood listening to you this evening. So thank you for coming and speaking to us. When I look at this map and think who is going to be affected by this property, and I think it's obvious to all of us in the room, you and us, that this is a natural for residential housing. The subdivision to the east on 36th Street, I don't see there being much effect for the people that live there from this subdivision. The only difference will be the people that live on the left are going to have a property behind them, but they've known that for some time and have been fortunate that that hasn't occurred until now. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's a new neighbor. Country Hills subdivision, which I'm very familiar with, I don't think there's going to be any effect on Country Hills subdivision. It's quite separate from this. There's not a natural flow out of traffic. I think it will remain pretty similar to the way it is now. The property that's going to be affected is the one that we heard a number of people from, which is 16th Avenue Northeast that goes out to 30th. I don't think we can honestly sit here and say, well, we don't think there's going to be more traffic going by your house. There is. Over time, there will be, because it's a natural way out for people from that subdivision. That is part of what will happen. But I know your street very well, because I go on it quite often. I think there's more people parked on the side of your street than in most streets in Salmon Arm. So I would be very surprised if there is only legal R1s on that street. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of R8s there that are not zoned R8. That would be my guess. You might not nod your head, but I think that if you live on that street, you're probably aware of that. It's not an easy street to get in and out of, as one of the residents had said. It will be easier to get in and out of once the extension goes into the new subdivision. So there's a plus and a minus there. One of the discussions we've had this evening is the difference between subdivisions and the eras they were built in, and old versus new. And this owner of this land is responsible for the new standard of his property. He does pay DCCs, significant DCCs per lot, about 10,000, 9,000 per lot, but he's responsible for sidewalks within his subdivision, sidewalk on 20th, the greenways pieces that have been described. But it would be very unfair to say to him, you need to fix up all the other subdivisions that were built before, because they were built at a different time and there was a different standard. The people who buy lots in this subdivision are going to pay for the improvements that he has to put on there. The sidewalks, the green spaces, that's why the lots are so much more expensive now. One of the reasons why. I thought about Mr. Spikesma's discussion about the trail piece between 16th and 18th. And initially I thought that was a really good idea. But I think what will happen is people will come out of the greenway up north out to 16th, and then they'll take a right on the sidewalk and exit up on the sidewalk up onto 20th and have the crossing there rather than a little bit to the left. I think it's probably safer. So in that way, I don't think that that extended greenway is necessary. I really appreciate the developer not going to R8 in the cul-de-sac, and we've learned that by experience, because we have other subdivisions where there's R8 in cul-de-sacs and they do cause troubles, especially for snow removal. Assuming this goes through, I won't be supporting any further R8s in the cul-de-sac, because I think that's part of this agreement. And I think that will help the traffic on 16th because it's the closest to there. The other thing people talked about was detached suites versus in-house suites, and the concern about setbacks of detached suites. The percentage of detached suites to in-house suites, it must be about 25-1 for in-house. And the clear reason why is because it's so much cheaper. It's pretty expensive to put up a detached suite. I don't see very many of them going in here. And in the new subdivisions that we've done, where it's R8, I can't think of one. So I think most people, when they buy their lot, are going to plan their house, and as some of the counselors have said, it's a mortgage helper, and some of you mentioned it, and may plan a detached suite or a suite in their house for either a family member or a college student or a renter to help with mortgage. I don't think there'll be many detached suites. The last one is parking. There is parking problems everywhere there is cars. Doesn't matter if it's R1 or R8. We hear about it everywhere. And it doesn't seem to, even R1 subdivisions have lots of parking issues for people. It's just a part of the the way it goes. I think a really valid point that was made, and I know staff will work on it, is the exit out of this subdivision onto 20th. And Doug talked about that, and I walked in that area, and that hill, the sight lines are not good. So that's not a good thing. What I can say is there's other subdivisions in the city with entrances like that where there have been traffic calming features, whether it's four-way stops, whether there's a change to the grade, some way, but there is a way to make it safer. And so I'm sure staff will be looking at that. That's my biggest worry. But it has nothing to do with the rezoning, really. It's not really associated with it. So I too will support the rezoning. I do thank you for your input. Certainly you were heard, and I appreciate what you had to say. Councillors, is there any other comments before I call a question on this rezoning? Okay, thank you all for your input. I will call the question in. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you to our gallery. Our last item of the evening is a question and answer period. If anyone has a question that they would like to ask council, please come forward to the microphone. We'll do our best to answer it.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the regular council meeting of October 26, 2020 be adjourned.
Is there anyone opposed to that motion? Seeing none, declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. See you. See you, Louise, Tim. See you,
Yeah.
Chad.